morning. Welcome to the September 17, 2019 public hearing for the meeting of the Landmark Preservation Commission. I'll call the roll. Chair Carroll. Vice Chair Glenn. Here. Commissioner Shamir Barron. Here. Commissioner Jacob. Here. Commissioner Chen. Here. Commissioner Devonshire. Here. Commissioner Goldblum. Here. Commissioner Gustafson. Here. Commissioner Lefty. Here. Commissioner Holker-Smith. Here.
All right, good morning, Commissioners. We're going to start today's Preservation Department public hearing agenda with item number 1. This is LPC 19-39860. An application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, Block 190, Lot 54, 215 Dean Street in the Moore Mill Historic District. A modified Italian-style row house built in 1852 to 53. The application is to construct a rear yard addition.
Good morning, Commissioners. Melissa Doherty, Preservation Staff. The project site is located on the north side of Dean Street between Bond Street to the west and Meadow Street to the east within the Moore Mill Historic District. The proposed work consists of constructing a 2-story rear yard addition. This block plan shows other rear yard additions on the block. As you can see, there are 21 other rear yard additions present that range between 1 and 3 stories and vary in depth. This is not the majority of the block, which is required for staff level approval. Additionally, as you can see on the block plan, there is an empty lot directly to the rear of the subject property on Pacific Street, making the visibility of the proposed rear addition another factor requiring commission review. On the right here, we also have a photograph showing the existing conditions of the rear facade. On the left, we have a rendering and axonometric drawing showing the proposed addition. Here we have some existing conditions photographs showing more close-up images of the existing elements that will be removed as part of the proposed work. On the left, we have a photo taken through the empty lot on Pacific Street demonstrating the visibility of this area of work. This is the proposed elevation drawing showing the rear addition as well as the proposed material palette on the right. Here, views from Pacific Street through the empty lot showing the proposed addition rendered in. And here are 2 more views also showing the proposed addition rendered in. In summary, this is being reviewed by the Commissioners due to visibility and because there are not a majority of rear yard additions within the block. The applicant is here to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
I have a question actually for staff, possibly. There's a cementitious coating on the rear facade now. Is that a Portland cement coating or is that a lime bridge stucco?
I believe that is a lime bridge stucco.
Maybe we should have the architect. I need to open here.
Hi there, my name is Brian Papa.
Just tell us what you're doing and why.
Oh, sorry. What we're trying to do is create a relatively quiet and contextual addition on the rear of the building. 8 of the 9 adjacent buildings have a white and off-white stucco facade. 2 buildings to the west, there's a white stucco addition, and there's quite a bit of white stucco on the view corridor through from Pacific Street. As mentioned, the existing rear facade is a barge or stucco facade, a gray stucco facade, and we're proposing to preserve the upper 2 floors of the rear facade. So we're proposing the lower 2 floors as a stucco addition to keep the consistency of the rear facade.
And again, what is the upper 2 floors? We heard what it is, but the color is changing, is that right?
We are proposing to paint that to match the lower stucco addition.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. We'll go to public testimony at this point. If there is anyone wishing to testify? My understanding is that Community Board 2 waived their right to to weigh in, so there is no position by the committee board. Last chance for questions, or otherwise I'll ask the hearing, motion to close the hearing.
Second.
Second, all in favor? Thank you. Okay, thoughts and comments?
It seems, but it does seem to be fit in nicely with the surrounding buildings and the fact that most of the buildings are white and stucco, makes me feel very comfortable. Seems like
Any other thoughts?
The size is modest, and even though it's less than the majority of the extension, it's not overwhelming.
Yeah, I would agree with all that, and that we approve these sorts of things all the time. I would just warn the applicant on choosing the right white, because if you choose the wrong white, it won't be white very long in any event in our wonderful city. So, okay, then, Jean?
in the matter of docket 19-39860, 215 Dean Street, Bourne Hill Historic District, a modified Italianate style row house built in 1852-53. The application is to construct a rear yard addition. I note that the building style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Bourne Hill Historic District. I recommend approval finding that the work will not damage or eliminate any significant architectural features, that the proposed rear yard addition will only be visible from a limited viewpoint through an empty lot on Pacific Street, that the two-story height of the rear addition will not overwhelm the building and will maintain a sense of the building's original massing, that the proposed addition will not extend to the rear lot line or substantially eliminate the presence of the rear yard, and will be of modest size and depth, that the depth of the rear yard addition will be in keeping with other additions of a similar footprint within the block, that the scale and fenestration of the addition will maintain the building's character as an individual row house, and that the stucco finish will match the existing upper floors and blend with the surrounding contents.
Second. All in favor? Any opposed? Case is approved. Thank you.
Moving to item number 2, this is LPC 20-00453, an application for certificate of appropriateness for Borough of Brooklyn, block 2120, lot 39, 374 Adelphi Street in the Fort Greene Historic District, an Italian-style row house built circa 1856. The application is to legalize the installation of windows without LPC permits.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Gerard, Preservation staff. This application is to legalize the replacement of windows throughout the front facade without landmark preservation commission permits at the building at 375 Adelphi Street. I'm sorry, 374 Adelphi Street, which is located on the west side of the street between Greene and Lafayette Avenues in the Fort Greene Historic District. So here's the designation photo of 374. As you can see, at the time of designation, the building featured 1/1 windows with metal panning. The windows that were installed, here's the 1940s tax photo. So here's what exists today. The windows that were installed without LPC permits feature black finished metal clad wood sashes and reveal black painted wood brick walls. So the historic windows at this Italianate style building would have been dark painted wood 2/2 windows. And you can see that, so here are the close-up photos of what exists today. So you can see the revealed wood brick mold and the metal sashes. Again. So you can see here in the row, the historic windows did exist in the 1940s in part of the row, and in other parts they didn't. So the designation report describes a few rows of Italianate style buildings, and so the applicant has put together the photos of the existing conditions to compare with the historic 1940s at the rows that are relevant according to the designation report. So if you have any questions, the applicant is here to answer them and discuss the rules of video.
very clear and straightforward. Other questions? So initially 2 over 2, but long ago, I'm not sure we need to. Yeah. Okay, fine. Please.
Lauren Lewis, the attorney for Redwood, has served in the net illicit notice of the property since 1997. I'm here to answer any questions about the application.
Just one question is, why skip us in the first instance?
I'm sorry.
Why skip us in the first instance?
I don't believe that my clients knew that when they had to come to the LPC, they hired a contractor that was doing work throughout the block to be replacing the windows, and they thought that that person had all of the licenses and permits that were necessary to get their job done. But they didn't know that they had to make a specific application to the LPC.
And I suggest you can see a few more of these on this block.
Well, maybe done. Thank you. Any more questions of the applicant? We can go to public testimony if there is any. No? All right. Committee Board 2 says the following: although the windows may not be historically appropriate, the windows at 374 Adelphi Street are far from anomalous, and the committee voted unanimously 9-0 to recommend that LPC approve the application. There's no response to this, since they voted in your favor, but you're allowed to speak again if you'd like. Okay, thank you. All right, at this point, I think I'll ask to close the hearing.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Hearing's closed. Comments?
Find out what their contract was.
Yeah.
You know, they did a good job of the restoration and in general of the replacement of the windows, the brick and holes and so forth. And given that already, you know, this happened in the 1940s in some cases on some of these buildings, I feel that it's appropriate to have them on the
A test that we often use to test these things is, would we have approved it if it had come to us? And I think, from my point of view, we would have, given that there's so many on the block that have been changed. We probably would have approved 2 over 2 as well. So, any other thoughts or comments? If not, if we're in favor of this, I'll ask John to read them.
In the matter of docket number 2000453, 374 Adelphi Street in the 4th Street Historic District, the applicant is to legalize the installation of windows without landmarks preservation commission permits. I note that the building's style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the 4th Street Historic District. Also note that at the time of designation, the building featured 1 over 1 double hung windows, as did the majority of the row. I recommend approval, noting that the work did not eliminate any significant architectural or historic features of the building, that the historic wood brick molds were revealed and retained, that the replacement windows match the historic windows in terms of details, operation, and finish, that the change in material from wood to metal clad wood is imperceptible from the public thoroughfare, and the finished color matches the historic brick molds, helping to support a unified fenestration pattern, and that the 1 over 1 double hung windows are in keeping with the configuration of some historic windows found at later Italianate-style buildings, and the configuration of historic replacement windows and modern windows installed over time in this row prior to the designation of the historic district, and help reinforce the unified appearance of the row.
All in favor? Any opposed? No, you're approved. Thank you very much.
Okay, next up is item number 3, LPC 19-26462, an application for a certificate of appropriateness of Borough of Brooklyn, block 1090, lot 418 8th Street in the Park Slope Historic District Extension. Queen Anne style storage lot spoken designed by Van Tool and LinkedIn and built in 1888. The application is to legalize the replacement of the storefront and signage without owners and tenants.
Good morning, Commissioner Board Preservation staff. The subject premises is located at 418 8th Street between 7th and 8th Avenue at the Park Slope Historic District Extension. The application is to legalize the replacement of the storefront and signages without LPC permit. The subject premises was a rare extension of this front building at the 7th Avenue and 8th Avenue. So it is located here. This first photo shows the condition of the storefront at the time of designation in 2012. So this is the storefront. And this photo here shows the historic text photo showing with the wide recessed entrance and the diamond shape here above the storefront. The small photo here again shows the corner building with the subject premises at the back as the rear extension, which was a store. And here is again showing the storefronts in violation. Please ignore the section on the left, which is no longer part of the proposal. Please note that any TV screen is to move back 18 inches from the storefront glass, which comply with stock level rules. And here they're proposing to replace the 2 display windows on the left with 1 and eliminating this vertical frame, so this is the proposed, and to paint the frame brown. Please also note that regarding all the signages, the proposal is to remove all these freehand sketch graphics on both display window, and then also all the adhesive signages on both display window. They are asking to keep the adhesive sign on the door. So this is the door, so they apply to legalize to keep these remaining, but remove these graphics on the bottom. They're also asking to keep these wide-mounted advertisement on the left of the storefront here. And then also there are 2 cameras, security camera, a junction box, and the wiring. They're also asking to keep these. So just a few more close-up photos. So these are to remove. This is the junction box, the camera, the wire. These are to remain, to apply for remain. This is to be removed. These are some other storefront at the corner along the avenue, so provided by the applicant. The applicant architect Gerard from Ava Design is here to further explain the supporting reasons for the application and answer any further questions.
Jeff, you architect? Do you want to explain it further or just answer the question?
I think Scott got it pretty clear. This application came to us in this fashion. We're here sort of legalizing it, we'll share it through the process.
Any questions?
Yeah, the infill that was removed to put this in, I'm gathering that that was not original infill. In other words, the size and shape of the storefront now is the same as it was on the tax photo. Am I right about that? All that white there, that's gone. That was not original.
That's correct. Those brick piers that you see on this photo here to the left of the screen, and again where it hits the corner building, are original to the 1927 build date of this building, but everything in between is not historic and
I'll bring up a question too. It never occurred to me, but almost every realtor that I know about, that we see all over the city and the historic districts, have for sale and for rent pictures right against the glass. In fact, that doesn't comport with our process. Is that right? I mean, they should be 18 inches back.
It's true that we don't have a rule tailored to that particular industry. However, I think being that they are right behind the glass, we could probably find some appropriateness thinking about what we do allow for decal type signage, a 20% sort of max limit on a panel of glass. Often they don't come forward and they come up and down more quickly than we do.
Right. Well, I think, just to be clear, I think the hand-painted quality of what we suggest to be removed is a different kettle of fish to mine. Thank you anyway. I just wondered about it, never thought about it. Okay. Further questions? Yes.
Actually, yeah, it is a question. It's described as unpainted, it looks unpainted at this point, but it was clearly painted in the past from the pictures that we saw. Painted a light color at some point. So was the paint removed? I'm kind of wondering if...
Was the paint removed? We should remove the other things was the brick, unpainted brick is what you found.
What are we talking about at that point? I can only speak for how it came to me with the glass fully removed. I cannot go, I don't have a history before I came to the project, I apologize.
I don't think it was painted.
It's often difficult to remove paint, so it's just...
It's there, it's there.
This side.
Yeah, it looks...
It's pretty much painted.
Sure looks
That was,
good.
that was removed before they,
Yeah.
Yes, it was not, those piers were not painted at designation. But in the 40s photo, the whole building, the corner building and the wing were painted, and now they're all stripped. So there's been a series of changes here, but at designation, those brick piers were unpainted, so that actually was a grandfather condition. I think we don't know what was behind that large awning, so what was done without it.
Well, except we do know that medallion.
Behind the awning, but the medallion still exists in the current photo. If you can see, and again, I couldn't tell by if the brick was painted, I wasn't sure what you were getting at, but even the lower part, but the rest of the building is brick. I wouldn't imagine that it was, the addition was different from the rest of the building. But again, I wasn't around in the 40s.
Okay. Further questions? No. All right. We'll go to public testimony. Jeffrey Geary.
That's me.
No wonder you didn't check in favor or against.
This one says fill one out.
Okay, sorry. Our rules sometimes are confusing. There is a position by Community Board 6 who conditionally approved, saying that the cornice is minimal, the storefront is more in keeping with the landmark district, including fenestration, and the front of the wood, and that it and the window frames be painted dark brown. So I think
I think we noted the historic color for the Benjamin Moore in the package.
okay. Okay, so that's the position of the community board. At this point, I guess you have responded, so anything else you'd like to say in response to it?
Only, is there any questions?
Okay, good. All right, so just want to close the hearing with a motion and a second. All in favor? Okay, the hearing is closed. Thoughts and comments? Yes, sir.
Because I visit Java Joe's with somewhat frequency. I actually saw this and I thought, wow, that must have been approved with staff. It looks pretty nice. So I'm all for it. It looks like a bomb shelter.
But with the proposals that are being suggested, not as it is, yeah, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's returning it more to the historic condition, which is good, and it's going to look better than it did, definitely. Already looks better than it did when it was improved in the past. The only question I had was about the brickwork, because I was thinking about, usually kind of, in general, we always paint front facades, even though this is, just not a distinguished building. But I guess that's the best solution to this. Obviously, we'll do some more repair on the brickwork. I assume there's some, looks like it needs a little bit of, additional work.
Yeah, usually when we have brick and it's been exposed, re-exposed, I think we're going to repaint it. I guess it's subjective. Yes?
I think the only other thing is that, that's a separate kind of, we usually like the security cameras to be a little discreet, more discreet, and maybe they could be painted or something like that.
We had offered to paint that, I left it wrong. We had offered to paint
Yeah.
that body.
That's all right, we're hearing's closed. So I think we should put that into the resolution.
Can I ask one more fussy request?
Sure, of course.
Can they bury the wires or do it from the inside? I think exposed wires. We never know.
That conduit that's on the
Yeah,
outside.
any, or this conduit, there's some loose wire.
Loose wires.
Yeah, it's a little open.
It says the cameras be installed flush, yeah, I agree.
Right, and exposed wires aren't,
Absolutely.
not already approved.
Yeah.
And that's that correct. That's a historic feature, right?
Can you put that in as well?
Okay, in the matter of LPC 1926462, 418 8th Street, Park Slope Historic District Extension, a Queen Anne style store and flats building designed by Bantel and Lincoln and built in 1888, the application is to legalize the replacement of the storefront and signage without landmarks preservation permits. I note the building's style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special character of the historic district. And I also note that the one-story commercial extension was built in 1927 and that non-historic storefront infill was installed at the time of designation. That the alteration, therefore, I recommend approval, finding that the alterations to the storefront infill do not eliminate or damage any significant architectural features, that the large display windows with thin metal framing are simply designed and recall the character of the early 20th century condition of this one-story building, that the proposed ground painted finish will be with finishes historically found at storefronts and buildings of this type, style, and age, that the unpainted finish of the facade is typical of buildings of this type, style, and age, and was likely the original condition of the building, that the relocation of the video screen behind the display window and reduction of the signage immediately behind the glazing will help the infill to remain a subordinate presence within the streetscape, and that the security cameras are small in size, simply designed to discreetly installed at plain masonry. However, I note that the white finish of the cameras and their projecting brackets draw undue attention to the installations. So therefore, recommend that the cameras be installed flush with the masonry, without brackets, and be painted to blend with the color of the surrounding brickwork, and that the wires, the exposed wires, be removed.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We approve that modification. Thank you.
Move to item number 4, this is LPC 19-40822, an application for certificate of appropriateness in Borough of Manhattan, Block 210, Lot 1, 31 to 33 Lispenard Street in the Tribeca East Historic District. Commercial building designed by Mac L. Reiser in 1946 to 47. The application is to demolish the existing building and construct a new building.
Good morning, Commissioners. Richard Lang, Preservation Staff. This item is 3133 Lispenard Street, located in the north corner of the Tribeca East Historic District. It is located at the northeast corner of the junction of Lispenard and Church Streets. The proposal is to demolish an existing non-contributing building on the corner lot and construct a 6th-story building with a penthouse and elevated mechanical bulkhead. The Lispenard and Church Street facades comprise an off-white precast concrete wall assembly featuring recessed fixed metal multi-light windows and storefront infill, all with an anodized copper finish and a dark granite recessed storefront curbing. Materials are on the head of the table. If you'd like to have a look at them even further. The secondary facades comprise an off-white ethos cladding. Gregory Dietrich of Gregory Dietrich Preservation Consulting, David Gross of GF55, and Seth Wiseman of Urban Standing Capital are here to present the proposal and to answer any questions.
Good morning. Gregory Dietrich of Gregory Dietrich Preservation Consulting. And we'll just pick up where Richard left off. Regarding the zoning, it is a C6-2A. The allowable zoning for this site is 120 feet high, and our proposed building is 95 feet high, which is well within what is permissible for zoning. In terms of the site history, this was originally 2 sites. It was, you see here, corner at 321, and then right next to it, 323 Church Street. And the original building was on the corner, built in 1853, a 3-story mixed-use masonry building, which was later augmented by its next-door neighbor, which was a 4-story mixed-use masonry building, pretty much what you see next door today at 325 Church Street. In 1905, the 4-story building had a 1-story rear addition, and then in 1935, both buildings were demolished, and a stainless steel diner known as the Silver Dollar Diner was introduced on the corner lot, while the next door lot remained vacant. 12 years later, in 1947, the Silver Dollar Diner was replaced with a 1.5-story garage warehouse, as you see here. And the reason you see shoes in this 1950 photo is that very shortly thereafter, in the 1950s, it was converted to retail. So there's a lot of ongoing program happening with this site. And this building, as I said, was converted to retail. Today there's a diner and a barbershop in the building. Just to look at the surrounding context, this is a view looking northeast at the subject property from Church Street. Lispenard is right here. And then looking north toward Canal Street. As you know, this is in the northwestern section of the Tribeca East Historic District. So it's very close to 2 sort of large thoroughfares and the resulting architecture that you see in terms of scale as a result of that. In this case, we can see at the end of the block on Canal, a rather tall and slender cast iron building with a stairway bulkhead. And then directly across the street, this is Church, of course, Lispenard. On the southwest corner, we've got Ralph Walker's 27-story telephone building, and then we have the 2-story Arthur post office on the other side, real range, just outside of the district. Looking within the district, looking south from the subject property toward Lispenard, we can see this 5-story masonry building, and then this gives you more of a sense of the context of Lispenard across the street, which is a combination of both 5- and 6-story masonry and cast iron buildings. And now I'm going to hand it off to David Gross, GF55, the project architect.
Hi, I'm David Gross. A little personal note, when I was a young man with dark brown hair, I moved to New York and I lived in Tribeca for 10 years. I used to walk all these streets. I lived on Nathaniel Moore Street and I lived at 55 Hudson. And this project is near and dear to me, to build a building in Tribeca. It's really fantastic. I haven't done one like this in Tribeca and I take it very seriously. And our approach was to extend the tradition of Tribeca to try to make a modern building that takes the massing and the geometry from traditional buildings. We didn't take an ironic or an intellectual approach where we looked at different windows in the neighborhood, like 14 white and made the facade represent all the different buildings. We didn't intellectualize it. We made it direct and visual was our response. We are inspired by these buildings. They're white. Some are cast iron, some are stone. The geometry is very consistent and very consistent. This building at 55 White was an important building for us in developing our design ideas. It's sympathetic to its neighbor. It doesn't line up exactly with the building next door in terms of the base of the floor heights, but it's a solid and it's traditional. There's no doubt about it that it's from Tribeca. Then what we did is literally we abstracted the buildings in the neighborhood that we were inspired by to come up with our building. We had looked at precedents and abstracted them, and then we abstracted one for ourselves, and then we made the building. We didn't start with the image on the right and create the abstraction. We had the abstraction, and that informed the building. And of course, it's not a historic building. We don't, we're not in 1989 anymore. We don't pretend that we can make old buildings. We are making a new building, but we are making it directly related to the old building. So our openings, while they are consistent in size, they are splayed, and the geometry is somewhat less than pure in the plan section. And we have a lot of articulation between each bay. There's vertical and horizontal reveal joints. Instead of trim, each floor has a horizontal member that breaks up the facade a little bit. The facade has that traditional thickness. It's not a thin 6 to 8 inch facade. It's almost a 2-foot facade from the exterior pointing to the window itself. You can see it's going to be precast. It's our version of a masonry building that was abstracted into a metal building, and now we're abstracting that metal building into a technology of today, which is a masonry again, but it's precast. So we feel that we're continuing the technological tradition of the area. This is an elevation of Lispenard Street. You can see these buildings have very consistent geometries from the base to the top. They don't necessarily line up. They are, the piers go to the ground. That's what we have in our building. I want to emphasize a point that Gregory made. We're not at the maximum base height. We're not at the maximum height. We have some height we could give, but we wanted to be as precious and as sympathetic as possible in terms of the heights. And that's the view of the Church Street. That's the side view. It's obviously it's a lot line, so we don't have an opportunity for windows. These are the views that show relative to where you stand, how much of the setback floor. You can see the top floor of the 6th floor is a duplex penthouse, so the 7th floor has a walkout terrace. We changed the design of the 7th floor so that it's more neutral, and we didn't extend the piers to the 7th floor. We made it just sort of a more glassy wraparound appearance. We have a signage band and large 8-foot doors on the 1st floor. We have a decorative anodized copper bulkhead at the base that repeats the splay design of the rest of the building, so that this angled geometry is consistent throughout. We have a very simple canopy, a metal canopy. It's just a rectangular, and it's very reduced. And then these are all the details that we've worked out with the precast manufacturer, and they're very serious and very easily, well, I would say easily. These are the floor plans. And then this is a view showing the visibility studies from different areas where you can see what you can see. And view E, you wouldn't see the bulkhead. Left, you would see the penthouse there. And these are all 3-dimensional models based from our Revit model, which is the same model that we used to build the building. So I think it's as accurate as possible until we build the building, which we're hoping very much to do. And I think that one thing that's interesting about the building is when you're walking down the narrow street of Lispenard, you don't necessarily see the arches. And then, when you come upon it, you see the arches. So I think it has that, by having a recessed, thick facade, you have a more of a nuanced view of the building as you experience in space.
One question.
Yes.
Are you saying that the precast module is a 2-bay module?
Yes.
And what's the thinking about that? I know it's very detailed, but I'm curious.
Well,
Why 2-bay, not 1-bay?
Okay, well, if you see the building is broken up on the narrow facade into 2 bays, and on the side facade it's 6 bays. And so working with the precast contractor, they thought that was a practical way to space the building.
As opposed to, I'm asking
And
about
1 bay would be too many connections.
too many connections. For
Right.
what, meaning too many for what? Too many.
The more you have, the more opportunity for mistakes. Where does the leak begin in a roof, where the penetration, where this chimney is? And so this is a practical compromise to the construction of the building, and it relates to the geometry of the building. So at each point where the bay is joined, we have a reveal and some soft
At each
material.
point where the 2 bays, Joe.
Yes.
Not where the each of the bays.
Correct.
Right. Okay,
Which is the same way that carries out this.
thank you.
I have 2 questions.
Sure.
One, what is the material of the windows and the storefront infill? It looks like wood, but is it wood or?
No, it's copper. It's anodized.
Oh, it's copper.
It's not copper.
Anodized copper.
It's anodized metal in a copper color.
Okay.
And we have that. It's aluminum. Yes.
Okay. and
Metal window, right.
Second question is
Inorganic simplicity maintained.
the side walls, which are there, the lot line walls are ethos. Can you explain why that's appropriate?
We wanted something that was very neutral and that was visually secondary to the main facade. And we know that some buildings in that area have ethos or stucco on the sides. I think that we would look to the board for direction if there was a.
But why ethos and not stucco, for instance?
Well, I think, well, I would use the words interchangeably between ethos and stucco because on top of ethos you still have to put a stucco layer. I mean, I don't know. I'm totally open to that. It could maybe be a brick, a off-white brick that has a color, a mortar that makes it look very uniform.
But your point is to try to make the building a unity as opposed to expressing those walls
Yes.
in a different way as so many walls in the room. Yeah.
To make it the unity mix subtly.
No, I get it. Thank you. Are there,
I have a question. Where does this material go?
We probably should have shown a sample of it. That's a granite base just to protect the light color of the building for the first 20 or 30 inches on the ground. We would think maybe a matte finish, not a shiny finish.
That's not shown.
I don't see it on.
It's like a threshold stone.
Oh, there it is.
Oh,
On the ground.
Yes.
I see.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, and I don't think it should be shiny. Be a slate.
okay. Good. Are there,
Can I ask a question about the uppermost bulkhead? What's in there and why need it go that high?
Okay, the 7th floor is residential, open like the terraces. The bulkhead is the top of the stairs at the top of the elevator. We can work with the elevator company, I believe, to lower the elevator bulkhead by maybe 2 feet. And we can look at lowering the stairs bulkhead by about 18 inches. They're both technical issues. You need a bulkhead for an elevator. And you need air above the stairs so they get the roof.
You need the elevator, since the top level is a duplex, you need the elevator to go to it.
I mean, I would defer to the branding and the marketing of the building. You know, we're looking to sell full floor units, so we're doing something very special here.
Right.
If that. So I mean, you could in theory have the elevator go to the
Lower level.
6th floor and then have you override me on the 7th floor. I don't know. That's how
But there's no code reason why one couldn't do that.
Mario, your code reason?
No, makes sense. You have to come to the front if you'd like to speak.
I think you could do it without,
Okay, thanks.
as long as you have the egress.
Thank you.
But they do need to, but they have to get it.
Right, bulkhead.
Yes. Yeah, okay, there it is on the roof plan. The mechanical bulkhead and elevator bulkhead, it's all the northeast corner of the building as far away from the street as possible.
Right.
You were just limited.
Right, just if you were to drop off the elevator such that its overrun occurred within the height of the second floor, then the room labeled EMR on the left would not require, would not need to come up above the roof of the seventh floor, which might affect the visibility somewhat.
We will look at that.
I'm not saying we should do it, I'm just raising the question.
Right. I think we want to lower the bulkhead of the elevator rather than eliminate it.
Let me, if you could put one of the elevations up, one of your private elevations up again.
Sure.
Yeah, that one's fine. One other thought that I had is a way of limiting the view of the upper bulkheads is to increase the cornice height. I wondered if you had considered that.
That is a 42, that's a cornice that's the code requirement above the elevator, excuse me, above the
terrace.
Yeah, it's solid, and a lot of them, that seventh floor, they really want to be able to look out, and it's already obscured by 3.5 feet.
Yeah, I understand that. I thought proportionally from this angle, it could even look better if it were higher, but I understand that people looking behind there
They want that.
Okay. Just thoughts here, we're giving thoughts.
Sure.
Other questions, really weird questions at the moment, actually, questions about design. Okay, at this point, we'll go to public testimony and ask Brittany Thomas to come forward.
Brittany Thomas, representing the Historic Districts Council. Although the proposed new construction at 31 through 33 Lispenard Street is well designed, HDC has some concerns with the finesse of its specifics. We were uncertain about the balance of the fenestration. While some of our committee found it to be sensitive, others felt the overall effect of the slender arches, especially over 6 stories, to be slightly attenuated. The visual impact of this peculiar airiness is exacerbated by the whiteness of the facade, and the combination calls attention to itself. We recommend that the applicant take cues from its neighboring buildings and explore darker color options to perhaps better fit this prominent new building into its surroundings. Finally, we're not satisfied with the rooftop additions proposed. Although rough mechanicals are a regular feature in Tribeca, they are there perforce when converting older buildings into new uses. There's little design reason to have them so prominently displayed in an entirely new building, and they could be at least partially incorporated into the building's interior or better incorporated into its actual design. Thank you.
Thank you. Christabel Ball.
Buckoff for the Society for the Architecture of the City. If this design were arrestingly beautiful, its potential prominence to be achieved through contrast might be less troubling. However, the suppressing of any detailing that would give texture to the facades, the strangely pale coloration of the concrete, and the anti-contextual height of 7 stories, even without considering enormous bulkhead. In the neighborhood of dark, intricate old architecture, predominantly, whose protected buildings are mainly 5-story, 19th century warehouses, this proposal is not at all what one might hope to see built in Tribeca East. Apparently, the real estate industry is disregarding the evidence presented in the New York Times last Sunday that the luxury residential market is seriously overbuilt, an average of 25% unsold citywide, worse in Manhattan, even without counting the shadow inventory of spaces built off the market, and even among those sold, unoccupied pied-à-terre and investment properties are predominant, while many more luxury buildings are into the pipeline. Now that is not your problem, and the Commission does not want to be perceived as obstructionist, but equally, or role in expediting new luxury development was never part of your original mandate under the law. The new Steinway Tower at 111 West 57th Street, which the LPC facilitated, is reported as being 80% unsold at present. It seems that not only does the public hate its presence on the skyline, but few who could afford to actually want to live there. Preserving the character of our existing historic districts should be a priority in this newly recognized economic climate.
Thank you, Christabel. Anybody else wishing to give testimony? Okay. Committee Board number 1 in Manhattan, the committee voted 7-0. The full board voted 28 in favor. This was in favor, 7-0 in favor, 28 in favor, and 1 abstention in the full board vote. And the text is as follows: the committee agreed to approve the application with the condition that the applicant will reduce the height of the elevator bulkhead to minimize visibility from the street by moving this elevator machine room to the cellar level. I'm sure that's possible. Okay. Further comments, questions? Would you like to respond? Maybe you should respond to that cellar comment. Okay. Give us your name, please.
My name is Seth Weissman. I'm the developer of the project. So I first want to start by saying thank you for taking the time to consider this project. My husband and I live in Tribeca. Our office is in the Woolworth building, so it's very important to us that we build a beautiful project that's well received by the community. I think the reception that we received, both in terms of unanimous approval at the Landmarks community or committee meeting, as well as all yes votes at the broader community board meeting, speaks to the positive reception that the design has had. When we made the decision of hiring an architect and we interviewed several, it was important to us to pick somebody that had a history in Tribeca on a personal level and wanted to devote the time and energy and the effort to deliver something that was a special product at the end of the day. Again, it resonates with me because I live and I work here. So I appreciate the time. We are, open to, I think, some of the suggestions that the board has. But I will defer to David. I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you for your response. Any other response that you'd like to give to the testimony? You're not required to at all.
I think we had a very successful meeting with the community board, and that was gratifying because they represent the community. We do want to make the building as good as possible, and we're listening. If there's some stuff about the side, and we're going to lower the bulkheads.
Well, I think you have 9 commissioners around this table who will agree with that point of view. We'll make it as good as possible. Okay. Are there further questions? If not, I think we can ask the hearing to be closed. Was there a motion? And a second. All in favor? Any opposed? The hearing is now closed. So comments and thoughts? Yes.
So, it's always fun to see a new building.
Yes.
And always fun to see people's different takes on this very architecturally active district. I think that the projects selected by the applicant to show as content or as inspirations are telling, and you can see those on page 9. I think that what's telling for me is the differences between those as inspirations and the end product that we're looking at. I think it's noteworthy that each one of these samples shows a few things that I think are missing from the proposal. First, a sense of assent, a sense that it's not simply stamped out of a Xerox machine or a stamp press, and but there's a sense of modulation as the building ascends, whether it's diminishing height of windows or a kind of the rate of graduation of moldings to create either base shaft capital or kind of tiers of different articulation. I think every single one of these shows that, and I think what the building reminds me of is kind of the Philip Johnson era of classicization in the 1960s. You know, this kind of dipping one's toe back into tradition with the fear of kind of jumping in with both feet. But you know, we're still trying to be modern, aren't we? And for me, it kind of lacks a little bit of nuance and delicacy that would make it fit better. So I would encourage, I thought that Adi's comment about the two-bay articulation, while it represents the construction method, perhaps, it also represents an aesthetic choice about how the facade is articulated, right? The reveal occurs at every other bay. Should it? I don't know. I mean, the argument that it's representative of a functional break is reasonable, but it doesn't really address whether it's the best way to handle it from an aesthetic point of view. I think that similarly, the corners, the way the corners are articulated in this project are exemplary of what I'm trying to say. Each corner is a little bit, each edge is a little bit different, and I'm not sure I understand why. The one down Lispenard is basically just snipping the pattern, which ends abruptly, whereas at the corner, it looks, maybe I'm reading it wrong, but it looks like you have a more articulated pilaster in the corner. And again, if you look at the examples provided on page 9, every single one of them goes to great lengths to frame the design with a kind of frame, whether it's coins or elaborated pilasters. There's a kind of attitude towards framing the building that is traditional and exemplary of how historic buildings are handled. And I don't think one needs to have Corinthian capitals and coins to absorb that lesson and have it make the building fit better. On a more macro level, I think that the bulkhead should definitely be reduced. The applicant said, the height of the bulkhead, the height of the second floor can be reduced. The elevator could be dropped off. It would dramatically limit the visibility of the bulkhead. So certainly every effort you made on that to reduce it. And I think that the party walls in this district has a long history of exposed party walls that are common brick. This building, by choosing to make itself white, which I think is something that we could discuss whether that's the wisest of choices, but it's creating a facade that is meant to be read like the other facades in the examples as appliques over a kind of a more workaday industrial building. And the use of ethos, I think, is the wrong material. It's very visible and should be a brick, probably a common brick. That's it.
Thank you. Yes.
So I would want to continue some of your thinking, Michael. I think I'm most interested in actually what Christabel Guff referred to as the suppression of the detail. And despite the fact that you've said that you're not as particularly interested in a rhetorical kind of in the rhetoric of the language that you've chosen, and sort of too bad because you're in it. And so in fact, what interests me is that suppression, and that means that the kind of the strongest expression of that is this cast frame, so that in the kind of extreme version of that, it might look like sort of a shrink-wrapped system where you see absolutely no detail. I mean, the detail is absolutely absent, other than that kind of suck of the arched windows through that shrink wrap. I think that would be a very interesting response, rhetorical response to things around it. Sort of notwithstanding all of Christabel's issues around fitting and appropriateness in terms of, program and viability of the market and all of that stuff. I think I disagree with you, Michael, about this question, back to this notion of fitting in, of something that is progressive or changes in terms of its scale as it moves from the street to the sky, because of this issue of the kind of my interest in the suppression and making it be even earlier than the Johnson version, sort of almost like an early fascist version of an absolute no detail modernist response. But since we're not shrink wrapping it, and since in fact you are using a system that is a precast system, this is why I asked about the two-bay definition. It seems to me that what are the pieces of the design that are least interesting are these horizontal bands, and I think that we won't like them, you won't like them when they're built in real life, seeing those kind of stuck-on pieces, that actually it's the reveal that is the strongest ornamental gesture. And so it's the reveal that should define the corners, it's the reveal that should be expressed to distinguish between bays. It's really the reveal that needs to rethink the cornice. So anyway, that would be the one ornamental element that I think is interesting. And I agree with others about the bulkhead and just in general the use of the sort of rooftop addition in new construction where the whole thing, why not start with what sort of it needs to be, which is the building, the arched buildings, and leave the rooftop to bulkhead and cantle and not to other elements or features.
Thank you. Others wishing to speak? Just a few more. Yeah.
I agree with Michael's assessment of the design of the building, and I found that looking at page 12, where the analysis of the facade gives a reference 12 back to 11 of the existing sort of inspiration. The primary facade in all these cases is so much more dominant than in the design, and I think that is something that if you go back to 12, you sort of see. And I think it was going back to what Adi's saying about the module and the scale, that perhaps the primary needs to be a little more primary, a little more material around it, and that would also address some of Michael's concerns about the uneven treatment of the corners of the building. It's a start to look at this analysis, but I think that maybe needs a little more work. Yeah,
First, I should say that I do support the demolition of the existing building. And I agree with a lot of what others are saying. And part of it, of course, is rendering the white and so forth, but there is this particular modern expression is calling attention to itself. At the same time, you're not drawn into feeling the complexity of the design somehow. And I think a lot of that has to do with taking an inspiration and then not following on some of the characteristics of it. The base seems shorter than it would be normally, and it doesn't have the same framing, and then we don't have to necessarily do a graduation going up, but there's not much detail to it, and so it's kind of is shouting its modernity more than seeming to establish a dialogue with the other buildings, from my perspective. And I do share the view about the bulkhead, that the bulkhead is really just too high. It needs to be adjusted. And that side view, both the side views that trouble me because, when I say both the side view, the bulkhead, the sense of that bulkhead sort of jarring up on a separate, the line of the building seems to me, just too, doesn't seem to fit in. And then the fact that you have this large white expanse of material that seems to be calling a lot of attention to itself as a subsidiary side is troubling me in the situation. As far as the bulk of the building, I think fits in, pretty well. It's a corner building, and I think there are a lot of other bigger buildings, and I think that's fine. I think my primary feeling is just you're kind of looking at this, it's making an impact, you're kind of gliding over the eye without kind of becoming involved in the beauty of the architecture. It's not happening for me to work within the context at the same time. And can't express it as well as some of the architects, but thank you.
Yeah, just a small comment. If you look at the image on page 41, one of the problems I have with the bulkhead, aside from how massive it is that a bulkhead typically says I'm a bulkhead, and it does that by being different material, by being set back in some fashion. And I think what makes it look so enormous is that it's contiguous and monolithic. Even in materials, where they break the line of the ethos, it looks like it's part of the wall of the building, and typically our bulkheads look like they're something completely different from the building itself. So just to throw that in the hopper, I think we'll have to think that already.
This side of the table? Are we speechless on this?
I think a lot has been said, and I'm in agreement with much of it. I do want to also just emphasize the color of the building. That these white buildings are beautiful. They generally somehow work within the context of their surroundings, and I think given the location of this particular building and what's around it, it's just a little too prominent. And as you take into consideration some of the very thoughtful comments that my colleagues have put out here, I think that the color of the building and how it's going to work within what's here will help, and probably will also help the design. So.
I'm in agreement with what my colleagues have discussed, and going back to the color, and it's an off-white, and this material is not self-cleaning, so I would say that in 6 months it's going to be the way off-white. It's not going to be the ghost that it is.
All right, I may be closer to liking this building than some of my colleagues at least. I'm intrigued by the idea of using precast, which the applicant suggested is going back to masonry, to the original idea of the cast iron, and then bringing it forward to a contemporary material. I think that's an intriguing thought. I'm a little surprised we don't see more of it in this district. Maybe we will. I think it's a very fine line, however, between getting it right and getting it really wrong. I think mostly this is white for me, but I'm intrigued by some of the very astute comments that fellow commissioners have made before my thoughts here. I think that banding is maybe troubling. I don't think I'm convinced that we need to modulate the floor heights or the articulation going up. It's a fairly short building, but others have suggested it. So working with Corey and his great staff to interpret what the heck we're saying as a group, which is always sometimes hard. I'm sure that you will think about what we've said and then come back. I think I agree with the bulkhead issues. If we could lower it, it would be better. The disengagement of the bulkhead from the body of the building, I think, might be a technique that should be explored as well. I asked the question about the EFS. Hearing more comments around the table that it seems to be troubling, I would think that maybe we should explore some options to that. The whiteness seems very white because of the model, but also I think Michael Devonshire's comments about it won't be white long because it's precast as opposed to paint. Paint on the cast iron, of course, can also deteriorate over time, but not as fast as this line. So I think there are a whole series of things to explore. By the way, commissioners, we didn't, not one of us talked about being able to tear down the building, demolish the buildings that are there. You did, sorry. I presume that we consider that to be unacceptable. I do too. Okay, so with some of those guidelines around the bulkhead, the coloration, the sides, and the general exploration of how abstract versus how more articulated this might be, I think you will come back to us with some changes. But I, for one, want to encourage you. I think this is a very interesting little road that you've taken, and I wish you the best of luck in coming back and adjusting a few things so that we can get approval. Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to move to item number 5. This is LPC 19-36280, an application for certificate of appropriateness in the borough of Manhattan, block 646, lot 57, 421 West 13th Street in Angelo Park Historic District. A neo-Renaissance style warehouse designed by Hans E. Mann and built in 1901-02. The application is to legalize the installation of the illuminated sign installed by LPC.
Good morning, Commissioners. Katie Rice, Landmark staff. 421 to 425 West 13th Street is located between 9th Avenue and Washington Street in the Gansevoort Market Historic District. The proposal is to legalize the installation of an internally illuminated sign installed beneath the canopy. The Commission previously approved a sign with a spotlight at this location. The applicant confirmed that with Department of Buildings that the sign is compliant with zoning, and they have provided examples of other illuminated signs. Most of these are illegal. However, the Bumble and Bumble and All Saints signage may have been approved in error. The applicant is here to respond to any questions.
Pretty complete.
Tell us a little bit about what you understand to be the rationale behind the rule in the first place. The rule of having it not illuminated with a...
Corey, do you want to, I think maybe...
Okay, Corey.
Yeah, I think Corey, there is a little bit more backstory here.
Sorry, so just a little bit of a background on that.
You're looking on why the staff or the commission has not traditionally approved internally illuminated signs?
Correct. What was the rationale behind it? What's the general, are the signs shown here that have been internally illuminated generally an exception, or are they generally the rule?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is no tradition of the commission approving internally illuminated signs, and I think that's mostly based off going back to the earliest sign types that was not a type. There was illumination, but it was with external fixtures, if at all. And so it's never been something the staff has been able to approve either as sort of a box type panel up on the storefront or a hanging sign such as a blade or bracket sign. And over the years, the rules have gotten slightly more flexible to allow other illumination types besides just fixtures pointing at a sign, where the light source is well integrated into the design of the sign itself, but it's ultimately still throwing light onto the sign, not with the light coming through the lens of the letters. And so even where we can now do halo lighting, for example, the source is concealed, it's a solid letter, the light goes around the letter. So it's just never a type that the commission, at least the staff's been able to review and approve. And I can think of perhaps only a couple of exceptions for any storefronts where the commissioners obviously have approved internally illuminated signs. I will say, I believe the last time one of these signs here came forward, I think there was some interest in considering it because in these cases it was very dark under the canopies. And some of these examples, the sort of percentage of lettering that was being lit through was rather on the small side. And so no action was taken on that particular discussion I'm thinking of, but there was talk about it. And as for the examples that you see, again, most of those have violations on them. There are a couple. One of them may have been shown as a note on the drawing but had no findings, was not purposely approved by the commission. I think that's the All Saints and was installed. Subsequent to that, the Bumble and Bumble sign was approved as an amendment to a permit that was to have external lighting, but I think staff at the time thought that the All Saints ones were approved as part of that earlier permit. So again, the commission and the staff have never purposely approved one of these in this district.
But in general, the signs in the district, to your recollection, are externally illuminated and not internally illuminated, more or less?
There's a lot of both because there are so many done in violation. Katie, I don't know if you have the numbers, there's at least half a dozen or more, I think, that are illegal in the district.
There's many.
So there's a combination of solid, of just plain signs that are either not lit, or lit by fixtures being thrown light from the other side of the canopy, and then these other ones that were not approved by the commission.
And the original intent of the rule was to emulate the historic kind of signs that was in the district?
Correct.
I just want to confirm, I think, Katie, what you said, and Corey, you wanted to answer. In terms of size, scale, all the rest of it, it meets the city building department standards.
Yes, they got confirmation
So,
of the building.
They're in, not our overlay of appropriateness.
Right, and I believe the dimensions are slightly larger than staff level rules permit in terms of the thickness and width as well. So it's mostly about the internal illumination, but also technically the size is a little bit as well in this case.
Okay. All right, so the dilemma on how to proceed. I'm not sure we need further, unless you'd like to provide further information. It sounds like we have it. Okay. Let's, before we contemplate this weighty issue, let's go to the public. Would like to testify, anybody? None. Committee Board 2 of Manhattan recommends approval of the application provided that staff ensure that it conforms to all applicable regulations. What we're supposed to do with that. Okay, so nothing to respond to, but you're welcome to respond to the affirmation. I don't think you need to. So with that, I'd ask for here to be closed with motion and a second. All in favor? Thank you. The hearing is now closed, so open for comments.
Okay, I'll
go.
Yeah, which way I'm going to go on this already. Setting aside the fact that this is, it's hard to even imagine in a district that receives this much intense attention that someone went and did this without coming to us first. We are where we are, and the fact that there are numerous violations that does not actually justify creating a new rule in this district. So it just inspires us to go forth and conquer the other 5 or 6 signs that you've now offered to us. No, not appropriate.
I might say, if we were to go the other way, the converse might be true too. In other words,
I don't even understand what you said, Brett.
Well, if we were to say this is okay, we might not pursue, perhaps, I don't know, the other violations. So this has, to me, it has a slightly larger ramification in terms of how
Well,
it
if the goal is to save our staff work, that's not my goal.
Never. No, I wasn't trying to suggest that you should think differently. I just suggested if others are going to think differently, we might think differently about the violations that we see. Yes?
I think on a broader level, the rule is created for a reason. There is a quality to these streets that we were intending to preserve when we designated them. And I think the district has had an extraordinarily generous view towards architectural innovation within it, housing some of the most remarkable, interesting examples of new in an old and historically preserved district. However, that streetscape, that quality of being under the canopies is very, very important to the district. It has certainly not harmed any of the retailers who are there. I think that the quality of darkness and kind of intimacy that is created by the canopies is very important, and the illumination, I think, strikes an off note and should not be permitted.
General agreement on any sort of? Yeah, I think I would agree as well. I think we do have to say, do we either think the rule that we've made here is right or not right? And if it is right, I think two people have expressed it very well, then we have to deny this as appropriate and also pursue the other violation. I don't know, we pursue them, but then there are violations that we give up on, I suppose is what we're saying. Okay, so I guess we deny it, is that what we're doing? Okay. Sure. Sorry. I think it's Ann, yes.
In the matter of LPC 19-36280, 431 West 13th Street in the Gansevoort Market Historic District, a neo-Renaissance-style warehouse building designed by Hans E. Mallion and built in 1901-1902. The application is to legalize the installation of an illuminated sign without landmarks preservation commission permits. I note that the building's style, scale, materials, and details from the pictures that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Gansevoort Market Historic District. I recommend denial, finding that the sign is not in keeping with signs historically found in buildings of this type, style, and age, or with the majority of existing approved signage found throughout the historic district in terms of its internal illumination, thereby detracting from the building and historic district. And that the internal illumination of the signage is not compatible with the character of this historic district and draws undue attention to the signage.
Second.
All in favor? Opposition?
The next item is number 6, LPC 19-41607, an application for a certificate of appropriateness to the borough of Manhattan, Block 828, Lot 59, 18 West 27th Street in Madison Square North Historic District. Proposed are a style loft and office building designed by Neville Bag and built 1908. The application is for replacement windows.
Good morning, Commissioners. Elizabeth Becker, Preservation Staff. The item before you today is 18 West 27th Street. The building is located on the south side of West 27th Street, west of its intersection with Broadway, within the Madison Square North Historic District. The proposal before you today is to install new windows at the primary facade. Historically, this building featured single light wood pivot windows with transoms at the second floor, and single light wood pivot windows without transoms at the upper floors. The item before you today is because the applicant is proposing single light metal tilt and turn windows with transoms at all floors, which currently does not meet our rules for a staff level approval. The applicant is here to discuss the details of the proposal, and with that, I will turn it over to him.
And just one point to clarify, it's in particular the configuration change that is the point that staff can review. The building would qualify for metal windows and also the total turn and look pivot. It's the adding of transom to every one of the floors that doesn't meet the original configuration.
Hi, my name is David Bench. I represent Studio Castellano. As you can see, this is the 1939 tax photo on the right-hand side. We'll zoom in the middle photo, and the left-hand side, that is a close-up 1910 photograph of the neighboring property. That's the only portion of the photograph that shows the original condition of the structure. As you can see, the transom on the second floor, but the pivot windows without transom on the level. This is the photographs of the building in context, and just a sheet showing some of the rules that apply to the application as required by the community board. We are pursuing transoms on all of the floors at the strong recommendation of Adelphi windows. They are the vendor we're working with on this project. We have 73 by 103 inch units on the second floor, and all the other upper level windows are 64 by 87. And based on the size limitations of manufacturers and the hardware, they strongly recommend doing the transom on all of the floors. So based on that recommendation, we walked the neighborhood and found examples of existing conditions where transoms are on structures in this district. So the chart is showing you a series of the addresses and the floors they're located on, and the map is showing you as well the same locations. One example we point out is 635 Fifth Avenue, which has transom on all the upper levels as we are.
Could I just ask, so was that approved at the Landmarks Commission?
I believe so, but I can clarify. It was not.
I'm not sure.
Okay. We also did historic research, and one of the best examples is the center top right photograph. That is the same historic photograph you saw the detail of the earlier slide. That is our neighbor at 20 West 27th Street. And it has transoms on all of those second floor above. A couple of other examples are by the same architect, Neville and Bag, in the same district and also at Ladies Mile. Some of them on the second floor, like some of them on the third floor. So there's a bit of variety in the conditions. This is just a straight shot of the opposite side of the street, north side. You can see the context is quite varied. And this is our side of the street, the south side, our building dashed in red. This drawing shows the proposal. So the left-hand drawing is the original condition as we understand it. The center drawing is the current condition, where you can see there's quite a number of different conditions. The red boxes are showing the different kinds of replacement, essentially, that we're requesting. The top one is a non-original aluminum window with a transom already installed. That condition occurs on those locations that we saw. The center red square is showing you in the four-part division on the facade of the floor, which is not original pivot. And then the lower square is the original pivot window, which we are also requesting to replace. The right-hand drawing is our proposed layout, which is transoms on all of the windows.
Nice. Is this sorry, is it a master plan, or will all this be done at one time?
It'll all be done at one time. Yes. The same three conditions we noted are photographs here. The top one is representing the original pivot window. You can see some of the details of the operation. The center photograph is that 8th floor condition, where there's an arrow of 4 divisions as opposed to 3. The bottom window on the left-hand side, that is a aluminum window with a transom on it, a non-original condition. This is a drawing of existing condition, which we are going to apply to replace with this, with the transom. Again, now this is the original window center pivot, which we are proposing to replace here with this, again, with the transom. And then this detail shows you our left-hand side original pivot window in wood. The center drawing shows you the aluminum proposed window with a replicated wood brick mold, which is not on this one. And then on the right-hand side, we have the overlay of the two. So what we're trying to do to match the original condition is, the visual aspect is the same. The actual sight line of the aluminum window is the same as the original wood window, and we're also replacing the brick mold in wood. So those two things are trying to restore the condition. Just a window schedule showing you the proposed dimensions and material of the this case. And this is the proposed color reservoir bond by Benjamin Moore, which we find to be the closest match to some of the original plans.
Questions? Okay, we'll go to public testimony so you can sit down. Brittany Thomas?
Brittany Thomas, Historic Districts Council. While replacing the existing windows at the north facade of 18 West 27th Street is a step in the right direction, HDC encourages the applicant to take this a step further. As shown in the presentation, the original windows pivoted in the center. Windows of this nature were once a defining architectural characteristic of buildings in the Madison Square North Historic District. As such, HDC finds that the applicant should retain the 9 original windows and replicate these throughout the fenestration. The addition of transoms would be a considerable deviation from the building's original design and would create a subdivision that has no significant precedence in this district. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to testify? So none. We'll go to the Community Board 5. Voted to recommend denial of the application unless the applicant removes the added transom element from their design and restores the existing original windows and replaces the non-original windows with new pivot windows. Okay. Would you like to respond?
Sure. Yes, I think we have been working very closely with Adelphi Windows, as we mentioned, and we price this out with a number of other contractors, and they strongly recommend not doing wood. The cost is quite, you can't use the same number of vendors. The operation, like I said before, we're actually going to use these as opposed to just having them fixed in place. They really recommend the transom to make the hardware and the number of vendors that we can use. The range is just later in that case.
And could you respond to the testimony that suggests there's not a precedent in the neighborhood? I believe I saw you presented precedent.
Right, we did, yes. I mean, the neighbor to the west, 20 West 27th Street, it has transoms on that.
Okay, thank you. Further questions by commissioners before we ask for a motion to close the hearing?
Second.
And second, all in favor? Any opposed? Various votes. Okay, comments, thoughts? Michael? Michael East? Comment? Okay, okay. Yeah, others too? I am too. I think the fact that a very similar building right next to it has transoms suggests to me that this is an appropriate change. It is a change from the original. Okay, let's see, Alan.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a concern about the staff with the working with the applicant on the 8th floor. Is that still?
Okay.
Yeah, it's just, as you can tell on the drawing, there's the one floor of the 7th grade that has 4 windows right now, and it's missing its original mullions. So they need to rebuild those, and we just want to ensure that the applicant works with us to make sure those are correct.
I know.
So that'll be in here as a
Staff, yes. Okay. In the matter of a certificate of appropriateness, Borough of Manhattan, LPC 1941607, 18 West 27th Street, Madison Square, North Historic District. Above are style loft and office building designed by Neville and Back and built in 1908. Application is to replace windows. I note that the building style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Madison Square North Historic District. I recommend approval with modifications, finding that single light windows with transoms are common configurations for windows historically found in commercial buildings of this age, style, type in this historic district, including at the second floor of this building. That the installation of new windows with a brown finish throughout the primary facade and the reinstatement of the original tripartite configuration at the 8th floor will help to unify the fenestration of the building, which currently features a varied mix of original and non-historic windows. That the change in operation from pivot to tilt and turn and material from wood to metal will be imperceptible from public thoroughfares. That the decorative wood mullions will be retained and the profile wood brick molds will be replicated in kind, and that the proposed work will support the special architectural and historic character of the Madison Square Historic District. However, I find that the details of the reinstated mullions at the 8th floor and the brick molds throughout have not been sufficiently developed. Therefore, I recommend that these details be developed and reviewed in consultation with the staff.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So with that one caveat, you approve.
Okay, Commissioners, we're going to skip to item number 8. We'll locate one of our applicants. So item number 8 is LPC 19-28538, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan Block 1128, Lot 7503, 21 West 75th Street in the Upper West Side of the Park West Historic District. A Renaissance Revival style row house designed by George and Walgrove and built in 1892 to 93. The application is to replace windows.
Good morning, Commissioners. With me, I'm Ms. McKinney, Presidential Staff. For this presentation, I'll be describing the proposed work. 21 West 75th Street is located on the north side of West 75th Street, in the middle of the block between Columbus Avenue and Central Park West. The proposal is to replace existing leaded glass double-hung windows at the third floor with single light double-hung windows. The leaded glass windows are not original to the construction of the building, but have been in place since the early 20th century. They're visible here in the circa 1940s tax photo. The leaded glass windows are special windows as defined by the Commission's rules and therefore cannot be replaced at staff level except in kind. And I'll just show a couple of context photos for you of the adjacent buildings in the block. These were all built at the same time and follow an ABCD pattern. And some photos of the windows from the interior, detailed photos of the lead glass windows. There are drawings of that presentation as well for reference. The applicant is available to answer any questions.
Any other questions? Yes?
So just, I realize that they're not original, but what do they?
Sure. Give us your name, please.
Good morning, Ross Adler from Adler Windows. Based on our research, we believe that the windows were placed during a renovation in the 1920s in which the home was a single family residence and the then owners converted it into a study, hence the state obscure glass.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you. We'll go to public testimony now, unless there are any other questions. First is Pascal Gabby.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Pascal Gabby, speaking on behalf of Landmark West. The Landmark West Certificate of Appropriateness Committee finds these special windows to be just that, special. Whether original or not, these windows have been in place for nearly 80 years, including the past 29 within a designated historic district. With 43 pinions per sash, they bring a refined detail to the street and emphasize the prominent bowed bay facade. Although not identified as deteriorated beyond reasonable repair, per LPC rules, a window that is special due only to its glazing can be removed and reinstalled in a new window sash that otherwise complies with the relevant criteria for replacement of non-special windows. The Landmark West Certificate of Appropriateness Committee does not find the replacement of these special windows appropriate.
Thank you. Brittany Thomas.
Brittany Thomas, Historic District Council. The existing leaded glass double-hung windows at the third floor of 21 West 75th Street are a unique and significant characteristic of this building. Though they are not mentioned in the Upper West Side Central Park West Historic District Designation Report, these windows are indeed visible in historic tax photographs and have been a distinct architectural feature of this building since at least the 1940s. As such, HDC cannot support this proposal to remove and replace them with the proposed window types that are prosaic in comparison. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Michelle Parker.
Thank you. Good morning. Michelle Parker, Community Board 7 Preservation Committee. We are asking you to approve this application. We voted in favor of the application in part because our research about the leaded glass windows not being original to the building concurs with that of the applicant. We find that using Marvin windows, a known source for historic townhouses, comports with the, is therefore appropriate to the character, will be appropriate to the character of the historic district. And we find that installing new brick molds to match the original configuration is therefore also appropriate to the character of the historic district, and ask that you approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to give testimony? Okay. Well then, this was just presented by the community board person herself. Therefore, be resolved that Community Board 7 Manhattan approves the application to install 101 Marvin wood double-hung windows with replicated original brick molds as appropriate to the character of the historic district, and that was a 37 for 2 against vote. Okay, any further questions before we ask to close the hearing? No, then I'll ask for a vote. No other question from the applicant. Sorry. You can respond. Yes.
The homeowner eventually stated.
Of course. Thank you.
My name is Leslie Gerard. I am the owner of 21 West 75th Street, Apartment 3. And I would like to address those that are...
Can you use the microphone?
We need to bring the mic
Sorry, so you can bring it down if you want.
Correct, yeah. It's pretty tough.
So, my name is Leslie Gerard. I'm the owner of 21 West 75th Street, Apartment 3. Simply stated, imagine what it would be like to live in an apartment where you cannot see out your windows. These are your windows that have a beautiful view to the street, as you saw in some of the photographs. It would really enhance the quality of life for us to know whether it's raining or snowing. Because if we look out the back of our windows, we see at the rear of our apartment, we see windows from the other side of the street. We believe that replacing the windows to conform to the rest of the building and the row houses on the block would improve the appearance of our building. It would better provide natural light and insulation and energy efficiency to our residents. And finally, coming from a personal perspective, it will allow us finally to see out the windows, to see the weather and the beautiful brownstones across the street. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Any further response to the testimony? Okay. Now I'll ask to close the hearing with the vote to close in a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So the hearing is now closed. Comments? Commissioners? Who wants to go? Yes, sir.
The photograph of the interior shows some really high style plasterwork in the room in which these windows are located, and I can only imagine that this was something that occurred when this was a single-family dwelling. And so this was a minor thing compared to then the use now where you have someone who wants to actually be able to look out of the windows. So while typically I would probably be in the minority view here and want to save these, I think it's impractical to think that someone could live in this apartment and not actually have light.
I see nods.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would also venture out on that ice maybe by saying these are not the most extraordinary examples of lighted glass that one can
right out
can find. Yeah. Okay. Well, with that, I think we have the consensus clearly. Michael, Phil, would you read it?
Regarding 21 West 75th Street, the Airport South and Parkwest District, the application is to replace windows. I recommend, I know building style statement and filtering features that contribute to special architectural and historic character of the Airport South Central West Historic District. I also note that the light glass windows were present in the 1940s certified tax photo at only one floor of the building. I recommend approval. Finding that the leaded and colored glass windows are not original to the house, part of a significantly designed front facade or a feature industrial in this road. The relatively simple design windows is not highly unique or a different characteristic of row houses of this town age. The proposed windows don't match original windows as well as the existing windows throughout the remainder of this facade at other houses within the row in terms of operation, configuration, finish details, thereby helping to support the historic character and beauty of the facade and the row. And that the work will support the special architectural and historic characters of West Side, Central West Historic District.
Second. All in favor? Any opposed? Unanimous approval.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna move back to item number 6, which we previously skipped. LPC 19-41607, an application for a certificate of appropriateness. I'm sorry, that is item number 7, LPC 19-3903, application for a certificate of appropriateness in Borough Manhattan Block 1116, Lot 2 West 64th Street. The New York Society for Ethical Culture Individual Landmark, also in the Upper West Side Central Park West Historic District. An Art Nouveau style institutional room designed by Robert D. Cohn and built in 1910. The application is all cited.
Good morning, Commissioners. This is James Preservation Staff. The application for 2 West 64th Street, which is the Society for Ethical Culture, is to install luminescent signage on the West 64th Street facade. The proposed location for that signage is the Arms Letters Center. Existing photograph. This is the proposed location here, and then currently on Central Park West, there is some signage which also is composed of bronze letters. These are some examples of other large-scale and institutional buildings in the district and the types of signage that they have. Size of the letters will be Other questions from the architects?
Is there a reason why it's placed where it's placed, height off the street? And also, why is the font chosen? Is it different than or the same as the font rather than?
Well, I see architect was responsible, or whomever from the applicant would like to respond.
Yeah, there.
Your microphone, and give us your name, please.
Hello, I'm Liam Bowling, the architect with Design for Ethical Culture for this project. We looked at several fonts in several locations on this facade. Here. The main entrance is on 64th Street, not Central Park West. So this building is rather very interesting building, but rather austere, and the whole purpose is to try to give it some identity, so people know what they're coming to, and so that the society has more of a presence. And so the entrance is on 64th Street. We wanted a signage on 64th Street. A few years ago, we put in this ramp on this side, and we thought if we had lettering, after looking at various locations around the facade, lettering over here, it would be a nice balance to the compositional spacing of the ramp. We located it high. We looked at the location here. We looked at locations down here. There are cars parked here, and we just thought it would be more visible if it were higher. And we thought it was just a nice balance in the composition of the ramp. The text. I'm sorry. The right photograph apparently is an earlier photograph, because it doesn't show any text in these little areas. This photograph appears that something is there, so we're not sure when it was added or if the original architect even had anything to do with it. That existing text is this style. We felt this, just because it's there, we weren't really thinking that it was necessarily right or that we had to copy it. We feel that text is a little decorative for the style of the building. And after going through like a dozen fonts, this is the font that we chose, called Old Stuff. Bookman Old Stuff.
Okay. Thank you for the answer. Are there other questions for the architect? Okay, thank you. At this point, I think we'll go to testimony from the public. And first will be Pascal Gaddy.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Pascal Gaddy, speaking on behalf of Landmark West. The Landmark West Certificate of Appropriateness Committee finds the proposal somewhat extraneous. Adjacent to the Ethical Culture School, this landmark is already well recognized. One is hard-pressed to imagine that an errant tourist straying from Times Square could be misled by reading Merchant's Gate and thus recalibrate in order to find the unlabeled Central Park directly across the street. Should that be next? The Central Park West facade has existing bronze letters spelling out the Society for Ethical Culture, founded in the city of New York, May 1876, as well as a banner with hashtag along with a lit sign box. The north facade, where this 8-inch lettering is proposed, already has an individual landmark plaque with this name, a sandwich board sign with this name, and a mounted sign box with this name, in addition to a flag on a pole reading Ethical. In terms of cumulative impact, this individual landmark is very self-aware. Architect Robert D. Cohn made a conscious decision for a spark, largely blind Central Park West facade, and here too, the committee believes less is more, or rather, 6 signs is sufficient. The Landmark West Certificate of Appropriateness Committee does not find the redundant signage appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Brittany Thomas.
Brittany Thomas, Historic Districts Council. HDC appreciates that the proposed signage is modest and does not significantly detract from the building's historic facade. However, we recommend that the Commission confirm that the signage does indeed align with the window bay above it as shown in the architectural elevation. As the rendering provided in the presentation does not match the elevation displaying such alignment, HDC feels that it is imperative to verify that the symmetrical placement of the signage exhibited in the elevation is correct.
Thank you. And now Mark Diller.
Good morning,
Commissioners, Mark Diller, Chair of Community Board 7's Preservation Committee. And the reason you don't have a resolution in front of you from us is that we were unable to reach one. There was universal support both at committee and at full board for the notion, for the idea of signage. The problem was the proposal that's before you did not pass muster. There was a resolution to approve a committee. It passed 4-3. The full board turned that around. Since I don't have an actual resolution, I can only describe to you.
But I do. Do you think that's...
If the resolution is one that's only a committee action, then that has been superseded.
I believe it's full board.
Yes, this was what happened at committee, and it should not have been transmitted to you, so I apologize. This is the committee resolution, which was not adopted at full board. It describes the conditions accurately. So anyway, I'm very glad I'm here because I can clarify the record for you that this resolution did not pass at full board. And while we did not, we attempted to turn it around into a disapproval, we found ourselves in that quagmire of trying to design the building for the architect, and better, we should lead experts to that task. Among the issues that that were the topic of conversation at full board, which were also raised at committee, are the following two things. One is that the sign would involve drilling pins directly into the broad surface of a blank stone, not even into the spaces in between, into the grout or what have you. And we found that to be problematic. Well, there was discussion about it being problematic. The second was the choice of the typeface. And the discussion centered around the use of a Bookman typeface, which, as its name suggests, is a literary typeface that is more often used in connection with publishing. And it's more of a Garamond, oval, expansive kind of typeface that the concern raised was not in keeping with the Art Nouveau style of the building. And if you put up LPC slide 3, you can see the existing signage on the upper left-hand corner there that uses a typeface that is significantly closer to the Art Nouveau style that one would expect for signage in this building. So on balance, we were unable to come up with a prescription, a positive prescription for you, but found that we could not adopt a resolution to approve as appropriate. And so that is the state of play that I can offer you today. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for clarifying the law. Okay, would you like to respond to the testimony?
I am Richard Van Dusen, trustee of the society and chairman of the building committee that spent 2 years trying to decide how to put the sign on the building and what it should say and what type font to use. In fact, the type font that is on the other side, the best we can determine is called Trajan. It's not a true type font. We could not duplicate it as a true type font. The closest we came to it was the Bookman old style font in its old setting and properly spaced. So that's what we use here. Now, subject to any changes Landmark chooses to make, we can do that. The problem is all too often we have people coming into our building to a number of public events that we hold here and saying, I've walked by this building for years and never knew what it was. Interestingly enough, with regard to the signage on the Central Park West side, in 1910, right as the building was opening, a critic for the New York Times wrote, nothing strikes the casual passerby more forcibly than the plain, unadorned wall which faces Central Park West. The more inquiring can discover the character and purposes of the building by reading the 2 descriptive tablets. But to the rushing New Yorker of the avenues, I love that one, the architect seems to have turned his back on the city in disdain. That's another story. So that left us with a problem. Entrances on the building, originally this was a house of worship strictly for ethical culture. Over time, we have expanded into outreach in the community. It is used for so many events, and I expect some of you may have actually come to events there. We do events for the League of Women Voters, for 350 NYC, March for Our Lives, all kinds of events in this building. The entrance on 64th Street is the center door, not the left door, not the right door, which is our handicap access, which was approved by this committee a few years ago. Our committee did not take this lightly. I said we spent 2 long years debating the issue. Our committee, our building committee, consists of 7 very long-term members of the society. I've been a member of the society for 12 years, chaired this committee for 7. One has been a member for over 25 years. Several have more than 15 years of membership. We recognize our role as guardians of this building, and we would do nothing to do damage to it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay.
Just a question.
Yes, sir.
There is a flagpole to the left of the main door, right? Is that flagpole to the left and to the right of it? Do they have anything hanging from it?
They do now, yes.
And what's hanging from it?
A flag, American flag.
American flag.
There is another flagpole to the other side of the door. These were obviously added after 1914.
Because you just
we
put
had
like
flagpoles with
that's what culture on flags?
No.
Why?
Because we tried that at one time. This is this particular street.
Sorry.
This particular street is a wind tunnel. The wind comes down from Lincoln Plaza, from the Lincoln Center, right down the street. And we've had flags ripped off. We had a banner at one time with the name, our name is Ethical, and that's a universe type font. That's our logo, and not this particular type font. We didn't want to put the universe type font on the building. I think you can understand why. But yes, we've had flags ripped up right and left, hanging from that toll. This time we had one specially put in. It's a brand new flag, somewhat larger. And we don't know what we're going to put on the other flagpole at this point in time. It has not yet been decided. We have a committee meeting Thursday. We may work it out.
What does the plaque say that's to the right of the handicap door?
That names this building as the meeting house. I forget what the exact copy is, but it is basically identifies the building in a very small type as ethical culture and home of the American Ethical Union, which is our overriding organization, which has an office in that building. And the plaque on the far left is the landmarks preservation.
Hi. I'm sure this was discussed by your committee, but the reason you didn't put it over the door itself was the size that you were able to achieve there, I see.
It's a long name. The official name of the society is the Society for Ethical Culture in the City of New York.
Yes.
Obviously, we're not going to do that. We had looked at, you're thinking in the plaque over the center doors. The problem was it's just not large enough to cover the slide sign would be so small that people would still have a problem seeing it. The street number is in the stonework on the above that door. People walk by all the time, say, where's Cuba?
And also, that center frieze is recessed, so you don't see it so well until you get up to it.
And if you put something over it, it would be obscuring the detail.
And we did debate that, obviously we did.
Okay.
Thank you.
Going once, going twice. Any more questions? Yes.
Can you address the question raised about drilling into the facade in the stone?
The method of application, we looked at several options, gluing it on, which was not recommended by the design company. They definitely recommended painting, because this is a very typical historical application of how you do bronze letters. There will be 3 pins per letter. If the letter ever that needs to come off, which I think is a concern from what I'm understanding from the client, it won't. But there are products that can be patched now, patching products that are used for these kind of applications, but it's not the intention to have
Just I'll follow up. I just counted the number of letters. I think there may be 25 letters, so that means 75 holes in the limestone. Is that right?
Yes.
Another question. How about the consideration of the knee wall? Was that discussed, or again, was that too low, or what were the issues with that?
I'm sorry, a knee wall?
Putting a sign on the knee wall.
Oh, the knee wall, oh.
Or where the guy's sitting at the.
Oh, like down here.
Sitting wall.
Well, because people would see it.
Most of our traffic to the building comes down 64th Street from Broadway. Very few people come into this building from Central Park West, unless it's a school bus dropping the students off. But that's our primary
Letters to that side. You bring it
well,
past
you can see, yeah, but we debated that, we can see it from the street, either way. If we put it here, where we have the ramp, which would get somewhat confusing and difficult. And bear in mind, all of those, that stonework around the stairwells, the ramp, was revisited and reworked from stonework that was there before. So we had to have that cut, replaced, and changed. So it's all original limestone, but we had a hard time keeping it green off. The letters on the other side, by the way, about 265 pins per sign.
Was there consideration of a, freeze of very sturdy and attractive freestanding sign? But not freestanding meaning, a stand, right, a beautiful stanchion that's just in front of, not that street wall, but there seems to be space between that and the building.
Actually, on a Sunday, we also have a little Redeemer Church meets in our auditorium, and another church meets on Sunday afternoon, and we also put sidewalk signs as billboards out, signage signs. The problem is the sidewalk is quite narrow at that point, so that foot traffic between the tree pits and the building itself, and then bicycles get tied up here. We're trying to find the city to put in bike racks, but the traffic gets very heavy. And we have about 200 people coming into the building, 400 people, 800 people in our auditorium. So when you have a crowd of people like that on the sidewalk side,
But not on the sidewalk. So what is the distance between the wall of the building?
My distance from this guy sitting.
And right, exactly. What's that
Is that the
distance?
same as this?
Yes, I understand the question.
Yeah.
That it's a light well, and there is a metal green over that light well. That is an option we looked at, having stanchions up and a bar and the letter standing on that. Here again are two objections to that. It was still very low. It wasn't as visible as we wanted it to be. And two, we were concerned about mounting it to the grading because that grading needs to be removable. So that challenge came up. And so that and we also felt that was maybe able to modern, just attaching them to the building with pins as a historical way of doing it.
I appreciate, the modernity issue is an issue that you already have because the logo for ethical culture is a sans serif typeface. So you have that problem. And so if it's a problem, I'm not even sure it is a problem. If that's what you felt was necessary to brand the organization at this point in its history, then that's what you have. And I guess I feel that no matter how this is resolved, I would personally look to the organization's identification when choosing a typeface.
No, I understand your comment. I appreciate that. The modernity was not a good excuse because we did this beautiful round here, which is very modern, reflecting the what the history of this building is about. It's more than Art Nouveau building, it's a big succession building. They were growing out of Nouveau orientation. They were pre-modernism. So that's why this building was rather more austere and not that decorative. And that's why we didn't really like the decorative, this more decorative font. So I guess the more excuse for not being on section 2 is that it was just too low. The society wanted it higher.
Okay. Any more questions?
Just one more.
These are questions.
I have a question. Well, individual letters on pins is, that's very attractive. In general, have you considered a bronze panel that might have just 3 or so or 4 pins that would have the full name and could be mounted on the grout lines?
Yes, we did. As Dick said, we worked on this for 2 years. Just this one line of letter. Panel, it wouldn't look historic, we thought. Just the letters floating on the facade, which is very beautiful and look historic. And the panel would definitely look like it was added.
Okay. Great questions. Lots of answers. Lots of answers. Now let's have a motion to close the hearing.
Second.
All in favor? So the hearing is now closed, and now we can make comments.
Okay, can I start?
Please.
Okay. Well, in some sense, all of our comments are anecdotal. I had exactly one location to be in this building. It was about almost 25 years ago. And I can actually vividly remember not being able to figure out whether I was at the right building or not. And it made me late for the memorial service. So I will certainly acknowledge the need for signage. I think for me, that's a given. And regardless of what else is there, it's doing something else. The existing signage on the park, the existing signage on either side of the path and the doors, they're achieving some other goal. They're not actually addressing the need for the passerby to know this is the right place. That said, the signage they've chosen is, at least in their images, is actually wider than the entire front entrance, main entrance of the building. And it will be on this individual landmark, and I hope the applicant understands the reason we're sweating this so much is that it's an individual landmark. We treat these with tender, loving care, and so we respect your 2-year effort, I think, but at least I do, but I think this is too prominent, and I realize that your theory is you want it high. I'm not sure. I think largely speaking, you've got people who are riding in cabs or riding on foot, and a sign that's below that the major molding behind above the gentleman's head on that picture right there will do the trick, and it does not have to be anywhere near as large as the signage that is being proposed. And I think that while they have a preference not to do it put it between the knee wall and the building, I think that's a serious option. I think the other serious option is doing something that I think Commissioner Buffy was commenting on, which is putting signage, I can't remember who said it, but putting the signage onto a backing of some sort. So even if it is attached to the building, that it actually is attached in substantially fewer places than I think we're afraid in there.
75
different. I don't think we ever were 75 holes in the wall when we do your landmark, but I think they need to revisit their approach.
Okay. Other thoughts and comments?
Yeah, I completely agree that there's no reason, I'm not sure what the solution is, and I do believe we need to revisit it. And several ideas that can put it behind there, even in question phase. But I actually think the sign's too high. And no matter what size it's going to be, eye level is perfect. And that's how people walk down the block, they see things in front of them, especially even more so today where people are glued to their phones. And that really just kind of gets in the way of the architecture of the building. I would not feel if there was a good alternative way to apply the letters, I wouldn't have a problem if it was below that.
I thought that your suggestion of the stanchion was right on. I mean, I think there's so many examples of buildings, institutional buildings with new signage right up the block. There's New York Historical Society. Its signage, which is on its modern ramp out front, is about the height of a person's eye level. It seems to work for them. Doing something, with the banners. Granted, it's a windy spot, but somehow the Museum of Natural History seems to manage pretty much the same kind of windy spot. I'm sure there's technology to allow for the banners to help. I think there are plenty of opportunities here that do not involve a major asymmetrical left field font sign. And I think that any signage that's pin mounted to the building should match the very charismatic font that is already there. I'm sure that we can find in this day and age artisans who can copy even a non-true type font and make it. I mean, it's a characteristic of the building. It's a characteristic of the style. It should be used if anything's mounted to the building. However, with stanchions, there's another Museum of the City of New York, I think, or Museum of Del Barrio, I forget which one. Another stanchion type sign, very attractive. Doesn't need to be in the matching font if it's not on the building. If it's on a contemporary element, if it is on the building, it should match the architecture of the building and it has signage.
Generally agree with Diana?
Yeah, I agree with I'd love to see signage for their building, and I'm sorry it's taking them, and I understand why it's taking them so long, but, at the same time, this does have problems with and when I was just thinking, again, maybe there's some more exploration of the area right over the center, something that was a little suspended, possibly, and not like entirely blocking, and also maybe some kind of a light wash from some very small lights for evening or something, so that you, because of the recess issue, could be used to, we could permit some slight illumination on, we often permit illumination on historic buildings. I'm trying to think of some other options that could
we don't need to think of all of them, but we're not the designers. Okay, let me just summarize in my own thoughts. I want to just start by saying I'm so happy to see these two historic photographs. This building has always made me, and now these photographs have really made me think, did Frank Lloyd Wright know this building before he went to Unity Temple? What's the date of Unity Temple? I wasn't quite sure. And I'm sure Frank Lloyd Wright, who really didn't like New York at all, would copy nothing in New York. But nonetheless, the unity of this building is extraordinary. Which leads me then to say that getting this right, the community board had difficulty with it. I think we're having some difficulty with what's being proposed. And I think it's the right thing that we're having difficulty with it, because I think what's being proposed is not yet right, notwithstanding your wonderful care of the building and 2 years of talking about it. Maybe we can help prod another solution. My own thoughts are it shouldn't be that high up. That's been said. It shouldn't be attached to the building with up to 75 piercings of the limestone. Several examples of suggestions have been given. I'm intrigued by all of them, I think, in most cases. So I think it's up to you to maybe consider these, working with staff, and think about it, and maybe come back to us with another proposal. I think it's true that we all agree with Commissioner Gustafson's first comment, which is we believe that some more signage is needed. We support that idea. The question is just now how to do it that's appropriate for the good one. So thank you for the interesting and prolonged conversation about a sound. We usually don't get into it at this level, but I think it's right.
This temple was 3 years before.
Before. Aha, maybe we went the other way. Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to move to item number 9 now. This is LPC 19-4874, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of the Bronx, Lot 5817, Lot 1938, 319 College Road in the Fieldston Historic District. A medieval revival style house built in 1924, designed by Julius Gregory. The application is to construct a roof dormer.
Christian seems to be immersed in chocolate. Concentrate more. I think this is very straightforward, and photoshopping makes it almost seem as if it's done. I'm sure it's not done, and we're not in the legalization. Okay, I don't think we need to hear from them unless others than we want. Is there anyone wishing to give testimony on this topic? No? Community Board 8 approves the application. So, are there any questions? No response? Okay. So at this point, we can ask for a motion to close the hearing. Second. All in favor? Please close. Pretty straightforward, I think. Good example already existing on the backside.
It actually, look, when you look at the picture without it, you think, well, it really deserves a dormer.
Should need a dormer.
And we just, tell me, how could they, we're just, we see so many efforts to expand in such extraordinary ways, to do something so simple and straightforward and
nicely
symmetrical. Thank you.
Agreed. All right, I think it's Michael Devonshire's.
In the matter of LPC 19-4874, in the Fieldston Historic District, an application to construct a roof dormer, I recommend approval findings of the work will not damage, eliminate, or conceal any significant architectural features. Construction of the new dormer will be consistent with alterations historically found in housing of this style and needs. That the proposed dormer will be typical in terms of placement, well scaled to the roof, and in keeping with the variety of silhouettes of this roof scale. That the dormer will closely replicate materials, fenestration, details, and finishes found in this house, thereby helping the dormer to be harmonious with the house. And that this house and other houses in this historic district historically feature a variety of dormers and roof lines. Therefore, the construction of the dormer will be in keeping with the character of the building and the historic district.
Second. All in favor? Any opposition? No, seeing none, you are approved unanimously.
Okay, Commissioners, we're going to move to public meeting items now. First, item number 1, LPC 19-39316. an application for a certificate of appropriateness of building patent lot 13, lot 1 Broadway, the International Marine Company building individual landmark. An office building originally built in 1882 to 87, designed by Edward Kindle and altered in the neoclassical style in 1919 to 21 by Walter E. Chambers. The application is to construct a recomposition. Mr. Ross presented at the public meeting on August 13, 2019. No action was taken at that time.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Elizabeth Becker, Preservation Staff. 1 Broadway is located in Lower Manhattan at the intersection of Broadway and Battery Place. The proposal before you today is to construct a rooftop addition. This item was initially heard at the public hearing on June 4, 2019, where the applicants proposed a 2-story mansard-like addition. At that time, the Commissioners requested that the size and visibility be reduced, the design be restudied to better integrate to the existing roofscape, and that the design be revised to more closely relate to the fenestration and proportions of the building. At the public meeting of August 13, 2019, when this was heard again, the applicants presented the following changes as revisions to the original design, as we see here on the right. They changed the design from a modified mansard to a rectilinear form, and modified the color and material of the addition to cast stone featuring dimensional panels. They decreased the overall height of the addition by approximately 4 feet by eliminating the parapet. And they also introduced setbacks at the end 2 bays of the 2nd floor to reduce visibility. At that time, the Commissioners requested that the design be restudied to further integrate and relate to the architecture of the building below. The applicants are here to walk you through the further revisions that they've made.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ward Dennis of Biggest Place Bar. I'm joined by Laurent Bismarco, Gensler, and John Ciani of Gensler, the architect of the project. I will run you through the changes that we've done, and then if there are questions, Laurent and John are here to answer as well. As Liz said at the public meeting in August, the version on the left, the Commissioners the comments were about the proportionality of the windows and the fenestration in particular. Commissioner Goldblum highlighted that the proposal did not take a strong position on where it seeks to integrate or address the historic building below, and the Commissioners agreed that they were looking for an attitude of positive engagement, to quote. What we are showing on the right, as you will see, is a combination of more literal and more subtle responses, and they're really based on a better understanding of how the original building itself works. So the overall width of the addition at the upper floor has been reduced slightly, but more importantly, the proportion of the fenestration has changed to match the building below. The windows at the top are also arched, which clearly derives from the historic building below. As before, it is cast stone, which matches the cast stone of the existing bulkheads on the roof. The derivation of all this is interesting in that the design of the current building actually goes back to the original 1880s building. There was a comment from one of the Commissioners that it's a tough building to relate to. And what happens in the 1882 building, and it gets carried over, is you have this rhythm of narrower piers at the flanking ends and wider piers at the center. And when they reclad the building, remember this building was just completely reclad, it was not rebuilt. They took away that center opening of 3 windows and added an extra wide pier. And that creates a different sort of syncopated rhythm across the facade of the building, which interestingly gets carried up through the additions that they did in 1919. This top setback floor also has narrower piers at the edges and slightly wider piers at the center. And it's a matter of inches up there, but it is a deliberate and rather exact difference. And then you can see at the mansard, the rhythm of solid void changes, and the solid and the narrower opening, or the narrower piers are towards the center. And all of this is then framed by what we characterize as the C dimension, which is this wider frame at the outside edges of the building, as you typically expect. In addition to that, we also have the very clear pattern of arched openings over square openings, which carries up through the tower of the building at the setback story and even at the bulkhead itself facing the building. So taking all of those, we've taken all of those cues from the building, including the arched openings as a more obvious approach, but also the pattern of the piers between the openings and how the setback story works to carry up these wider piers within what's now the sort of enlarged bulkhead with the very wide C piers again and the slightly narrower piers at the edges. Similarly, we have carried up the pattern of arched opening over square opening up through the building into the addition itself. In terms of dimensions and proportions, the windows that we're proposing at the upper story of the addition match the windows at the setback 3 stories below, sorry. However, the dimension of the piers changes slightly. The result is the solid to void ratio of the addition changes pretty dramatically, and we have about 20% less void than in what we showed in the previous public meeting, and even a 25% increase in the pier width from what we're proposing at the addition to what we're referencing from below. So it's definitely not an exact copy of what's below. It's really taking the cues from what's below and interpreting that into the addition itself. In terms of visibility, very similar to what we showed last time. I think most or all the commissioners were comfortable with the overall massing of what was proposed. Just as a reminder, these mock-ups, the orange is what was presented at the original public hearing in the mansard form. The dark gray is what we're now proposing. And we've actually reduced slightly at the upper floor by about 4 feet in overall width. So from the west looking east, very minimal visibility over the top of the mansard. From Bowling Green looking west, the addition is not visible. From the south, the upper story of the addition is visible. Again, this is about 4 feet less in frontal dimension compared to what we showed in August. And from further back, the addition is visible when you start to see the lower floor below. However, we have increased the height of this spandrel between the 13th and 14th floor by 12 inches. So at least in this view, you no longer see the heads of the windows at the 13th floor. And these are the views that we've shown throughout the hearings, which is why we're using these comparisons. And the last thing I would point out is that the bulkhead that's visible and the proposed addition, all light masonry, which sets up well against the background of the buildings and columns. So that's the summary of the changes and where they came from. As I mentioned, we're happy to take any questions.
Great. Thank you. Are there questions?
Just a quick one. Did you, is the height the same or did you increase the height? Or is it an illusion of perspective? Is the height of the existing, the current version, the latest revision, the same as the prior version? Or
Yes. Yeah, the height did not change from the prior version.
Questions? Okay. You can, the architect's here, but George, you did such an extraordinary job of explaining the mysteries of the proportional system and unlocking it for the architect. Okay.
They did all the work.
You got it. Well, you did some pretty good work yourself, I think, in explaining all that. So I guess we can, what are we doing, closing hearing? No, just keep going with comments and get all this. governance stuff. Annie, go for it.
Much improved.
Yeah. Approvable?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, others? All right, I guess we're there. You know, I make most of these hearings, but somehow I miss both times that you've come. So apologies. So I'm seeing this for the first time, so I'll make a couple of comments. One is that as an architect myself, I now know if I ever, and any of my friends, ever are trying to convince their client that they really should reclad their building, happens occasionally, I would use this as an example. Boy, don't think little. This is amazing recladding job. Not relevant here to this discussion, however. I would just add the comment that normally a mansard is the top of the building. So I think what you've attempted to do here is somewhat at odds with history, but somehow you've done it. I think it's the setback, of course, that helps a lot, but also finally it's the articulation of the window and the solid to void relationship, which I think somehow magically now works. So I guess we're at an approval moment. So Wellington, take charge.
In the matter of LPC 19-39316, number 1, Broadway, International Mercantile Marine Company building, an individual landmark. The application is to construct a rooftop addition. I recommend approval finding the demolition of the existing penthouse and construction of proposed addition will not damage or destroy any significant architectural features of the roof. That the building has a history of significant alterations and large visible rooftop accretions, and therefore the presence of a visible rooftop addition is in keeping with the architectural evolution of the landmark. That certain design elements of the historic roofscape, including the east and west elevator and stair bulkheads, will be retained and restored. That the addition, while highly visible from the south, integrates with the architecture of the building below, and at the same time recedes from view due to the taller buildings behind it. That the limestone tinted cast stone material of the proposed rooftop addition will harmonize with the materials and color palette of the building. That the arch and square-headed windows at the addition will be consistent with the scale and rhythm of the fenestration of the historic building, particularly at the upper setback in terms of alignment, shape, and solid to void ratio. That the use of single pane windows with a dark finish at the addition will be complementary counterpoint to the historic multi-pane windows and will reflect the contemporary design of the addition.
Second. Approval? Second. We did the second. I heard it. It's just very quiet. So all for approval? Yes. Any opposition? No. Okay, so it's approved. And now we will break for lunch until about 12:45.
Okay, Commissioners, we're going to start back up with item number 2, the public meeting item agenda. This is LPC 20-00244, an application for a certificate of appropriateness of road Manhattan Block 1498, Lot 33, 1040 Park Avenue in the Park Avenue Historic District. A Renaissance Revival style apartment building designed by Delano and Aldrich and built in 1923-24. The application is to establish a master plan governing the future installation of through-wall louvers. This was last presented at the public hearing of August 13, 2019. No action was taken.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Karina Bishop, Preservation staff. The application before you is 1040 Park Avenue, which is located at the northwest corner of 86th Street and Park Avenue, which you can see on the map on the bottom right. It is in the Park Avenue Historic District. The application was first presented at the public hearing of August 13, 2019. The proposal is for a master plan governing the future installation of through-wall louvers, which does not meet the staff level rules due to the presence of decorative masonry below the windows, which you can see in the detail photo number 3. At the public hearing, some of the commissioners raised questions about the proposal, specifically the possibility of restoring some of the existing openings in order to reduce the overall number of through-wall penetrations as well as creating a more uniform size and pattern for the proposed units. The applicant has returned with a revised proposal, which shows certain existing units will be removed and the openings infilled to restore the facade. Over time, this will allow for 7 additional bays to be devoid of any penetrations. These changes are illustrated on the revised elevations, which are seen on these 2 slides. The existing south elevation on the left, the units highlighted in red will be removed and infilled with new brick masonry. On the right, the units highlighted in green represent new penetrations that will create a regular pattern and uniform louver size throughout the building. This elevation also shows the units removed will be infilled. The applicant has also provided additional section details showing how 2 sizes of HVAC units will be concealed by the 1 exterior louver size. The larger HVAC units will only require the removal of 1 additional brick course behind the louver. The architect, Robert Bates, is here to answer any additional questions.
Question?
So the difference is, the difference of
As it's different from last time it was presented, the last proposal did not include the removal of existing openings on outer bays as part of the master plan in particular. There are a couple other inner bays as well, but the major change here is that when in the future when an applicant is either doing a major government or changes hands and they want to relocate units, will not be allowed to put them into those end bays with the one exception on the corner. They'll put them onto the side facades or on that opposing corner side. So this has several additional clean bays that eventually would have no through-wall openings on it over time, and that's the main difference from what you've seen last time. The question to the louver size itself, previously they proposed to have 1 size, and I think some commissioners were asking about the different size equipment that would be behind it, if it was necessary or desirable to have multiple size louvers. The applicant, as does staff, still believes that the 1 size is typically what's done. And in this case, the unit sizes are very close to one another, so it's only 1 course of brick different between the 2 installations. So the big change really is the introduction of several bays, including those end bays, 3 out of 4 that would have no louvers once this is realized over time.
I didn't see this when it came before us before. The number of, in the final application of this, when it works its way through, because this is a master plan, so it'll occur over time, are there fewer penetrations than there are now? Or they just get reorganized?
The architect has some of this data.
Okay. Just say, yeah, vote to open the proceedings, please. A second. All in favor? Okay, thank you. State your name, please.
Robert Bates, Walton Architect. Presently, there are 68 openings, and we are proposing to add 47 more, but deduct from that by closing up 16 openings. So the net add is going to be 31, which represents approximately 45% of the window opening locations on the facades.
Okay, so a net add, a significant net add, I would say, but a reorganized situation, so it's more legible, let's say, or
more legible. And the other thing to point out is that on the existing, on the left, for instance, on the upper floors, you see smaller dimensions on some of the through walls and odd placements of some that are off to the left or off to the right with all sorts of louver configurations. And so the proposal is when an apartment changes hands and they're doing HVAC through wall work, those existing openings that are scattered or don't meet the master plan elevation will be modified as well to meet the proposed details and grill color and things like that.
And so to restore the brickwork in places where that's going to occur, you're proposing new brick?
new brick, and the good news is we have attic stock of a very good brick match. I've been in this building for a long time as an architect, and we reconstructed the southeast corner entirely, and it's a very good brick match and mortar match that we have on file with attic stock brick.
Well, I was going to suggest that as you remove new brick, or make new openings, that brick we use as attic stock.
That can be done. We had a little trouble with that because this mortar is tenacious.
Portland mortar.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if you've already established it,
We have a very good match.
so many examples all around the city of hideous matches of brick.
Yeah. Well, the good news here is that if you notice the brick pattern is a stacked bond.
Yeah.
And so we don't need to tube the brick in which always sort of gives it. And so it's its own, has its own architectural limits because it's stacked bond.
Stacked bond, yeah, right.
I really appreciate the fact that we're trying to protect certain window blinds, and so how many are there in the building?
Well, there's 10 bays on one facade and 12 on the other.
And so, and how many blinds have we protected on each facade?
Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 there.
55%.
55%. You know, the unfortunate thing is because of the interior room layout, we don't get to choose necessarily which bays get preserved entirely and which get populated. We have on the corner rooms, we did swap, we had the choice to swap from one side to the other to create a clean bay, but the problem was at that point we had to fill in the adjacent bay because of one bedroom. And so there's some, certainly from a passerby's viewpoint, ultimately this is going to look a lot better than it does because it will have matching grills and it will all be uniform. But we didn't get to pick and choose, you know, every other bay or just the end bays or just the center bays to get this to work because of the room layout.
Now, can I ask a question about that? On the far right, goes south, you picked the outermost bay, rightmost bay to populate, and the one to its left to depopulate. Could that be switched?
Not on every floor.
And also, I just wanted to clarify that the outer corner bays are staff level, that has plain brick, and it does not have the decorative masonry.
And that raises the point that we talked about last time, which is that everything about this proposal, save for those installations through that stack bond brickwork, meet the staff level rules. So we're looking at this in total, but in terms of there is no sort of maximum number of new installations that can be approved. It's more based on is there an established pattern that we can follow and be consistent with. So this is really about, is it okay to put these openings through that stack bond brick and the effect on that particular feature at the moment.
That's the question.
Other questions?
I have a question about the existing. Installations. They all seem to be directly under the windowsill, which is how you're drawing the elevation, but the detail calls for it to be below that strap on. So, in locations where they're existing, they will remain as they are up against the sill.
No, we will restore the stack on over them. Soldier courses.
Okay, any other questions? All right. What are you feeling?
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
I mean, well, I was going to suggest that it's not quite ADA-like, but the ability to acquire air conditioning seems to be maybe somewhat less than that significant, but nonetheless, it's sort of hard to suggest to people that they can't air condition and to open all the windows, and, particularly when the building is already pockmarked with these openings. I think, to me, this seems like a reasonable compromise between a willy-nilly approach and so forth. So I know we don't like to go through the wall, but we already have gone through the wall so many times here. This is just a reorganization. What's that?
We asked last time.
We asked them, we asked them to try to clean it up and make it more like a master plan. It just looked like a hodgepodge that really didn't, I'm saying master plan, an organized composition, but I mean, they could.
Of course, and that's what they've done, but I mean, you asked another question, how can they do central?
Last time they talked about that, there was no path for conduit for the hoses to go.
Yeah, I think that's generally true in almost all these kinds of programs. Maybe occasionally, but it would be very unusual.
We saw it on a couple of buildings on the Upper East Side a long time ago, but not much.
It just has to go through so many.
They put them on like balconies on the back stair egresses, like the first one chapter we saw that. It's an unusual situation we can get away with.
All right, Jimmy, are you ready to read it?
On the matter of docket 20-00244, and 40 Park Avenue Historic District. A Renaissance Revival style apartment building designed by Delano and Aldrich and built in 1923-24. The application is to establish a master plan governing the future installation of three-wall louvers. I know that the building style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Park Avenue Historic District. I also note that the existing through-wall louvers at the Park Avenue and East 86th Street facades were installed prior to the designation of the historic district. I recommend approval finding that the establishment of a building-wide master plan for through-wall HVAC louvers will create a uniform pattern of installations over time. That the location of the through-wall units, including only one unit per room and centered beneath the window openings, corresponds to a previously established regular pattern of installations on the upper floors of the building. That when a new HVAC opening is requested, if that apartment has an existing opening for HVAC louvers at an ends bay, with the exception of the south-facing corner where installations will still be permitted, the existing opening will be filled in as a requirement for installation of a new HVAC opening. That only a select portion of the decorative brickwork below the window openings will be removed, leaving a portion of the header coarse brick spandrels in place and resulting in a condition that is in keeping with similar alterations on this facade. That the proposed through-wall units will feature flush-mounted architectural louvers finished to match the color of the surrounding masonry, and that the work will not detract from the special architectural and historic character of the building and the Park Avenue Historic District.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? No opposed, you are approved unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move to the last item of the day, public meeting item number 3, LPC 19-32409, application for a certificate of appropriateness of the Borough of the Bronx, Block 2473, Lot 8, 700 Gerard Avenue, Grand Concourse Historic District. An empty lot. The application is to construct an building.
located on the east side of the avenue between East 153rd and 157th Streets in the Grand Concourse Historic District. The proposal was first heard on April 30th of this year. The initial proposal was to construct a school building featuring a curved ground floor entrance clad in stucco, irregular punched masonry openings, red-orange fiber cement panels, and beige wood cladding. The ground floor of the building is raised to accommodate the underlying MTA tunnel which runs diagonally through the site. The commissioners present at the hearing expressed a consensus of support for the construction of a new building on the site and that the massing and scale of the proposed building was appropriate for the streetscape. However, the commissioners present had several concerns regarding the design and details of the base of the building, including its relationship with the streetscape, the openness of the entrance, and the placement of the curve of the facade. There are also concerns about the placement and textural quality of the materials and how the different materials intersect and return at the sides of the building. The proposal has been revised to address these concerns. At the ground floor, the column separating the chairlift from the stairs, which conceals a structural column, has been reduced in depth. More glazing has been added to the main entrance infill. The curve of the ground floor entrance has been revised so that the curved portion is closest to the entrance stairs. And the cladding was revised from a white synthetic stucco to an off-white 3-part cementitious stucco. The color of the fiber cement panels was revised from red-orange to beige. The panel's shape has also been simplified to be more rectilinear. At the double-height fifth floor and the stairway, the punch window openings were enlarged and the fenestration pattern regularized, which is emphasized by bands of recessed brick at the north facade that return on a portion of the north and south outline facades. The parapet and a portion of the return on either side feature a projecting band of brick and a metal coping. And the applicant is here to introduce a representative from the school and further discuss the revisions.
Hi Commissioners, my name is Jackie Pruduval, Preservation Consultant on the project. I'd first like to introduce Melissa Melkonian.
Sorry.
Yes.
I didn't open the, ask for a motion to open the proceedings. If I could have it now in a second. All in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Jackie Pruduval, Preservation Consultant on the project. I just want to give a brief opportunity for the principal of the school to speak and give you some background on the project. Her name is Melissa Melkonian.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Melissa Melkonian. I am the founder and principal of the American Dream School. Just to give you a little bit of background, the American Dream School is a dual language school that develops academic excellence in Spanish and English, preparing students for college and to be leaders in their community. So our school is historically a school designed to be a dual language school that focuses, targets, recruits, enrolls English language learners and immigrant students. Our project here is not only important for our students, but also it's important to note that there is a lack of high schools in particular who are servicing and targeting our population of immigrant students and English language learners. And so right now we are counting on having our school built for the 2020-2021 school year so that our students, 340 students, can continue their education and we can be out of our temporary location that we've been kind of moving from space to space, and we can have a space that we call home for our students as they go into their senior year of high school. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming and explaining that to us.
Hi, Jackie Pruduval again. So after Amy's very thorough introduction, I just wanted to briefly give a recap of where the project team really focused on making changes here in response to your comments. So as Amy had said, your comments at the last hearing in April, and it's been a while, so I think it's not such a bad thing to go over these things once again. Your concerns were mainly with the ground floor and the main entrance, the fenestration pattern, and the details of the facade and how they relate to the overall district and the neighboring buildings. So in response to that specifically, the team has changed where the curve in the wall of the ground floor is, so that in this case, it now curves into the main entrance, highlighting the main entrance. which is consistent with Art Deco buildings that were shown to you previously in the last presentation. Let's see, the wall between the stair and the ADA lift has been pulled back from the facade. And as Amy also mentioned, there's now, the color of this revised rain screen color now returns on this wall as well. The fenestration pattern has been regularized. I also want to point out this is the gym up here. This is the fire stair. I mean, it's not fire stair. Stairs, excuse me. And lastly, as you can see, the softened facade, the colors have changed, creating a more consistent color palette with the neighboring Art Deco buildings that are very much in a palette of different beiges. Also, brick banding has been employed between the windows, and that detail returns on the sides to soften the building facade, which was another comment of many commissioners last time. And with that, I'd like to introduce the architect, Rainer Schramm, to describe the changes. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for having us again. My name is Rainer Schramm. I'm principal at Partners for Architecture. I design the building and I'm responsible for everything that has happened since we presented to you last time over 4 months ago. So it's quite a long time, but to be frank, we struggled a little bit with the plenitude and with the multitude of comments that you had and the diversity of them and how to bring them all into a consensus that we could work on with the consultants. And but the real time delay was because we're in the middle of a huge team between there's developers, underwriters, and each change needs to be passed on to them, and then there's a general contract already signed, or gross maximum price, guaranteed maximum price, and everything needs to be vetted as to costs and impact and all that. And then lastly, of course, there's the school who has yet a different set of requirements and wishes. So we try to bring this all together, and I hope we've made some real progress here. The current proposal is on the right, and you will see most importantly, I felt like we needed to reflect the brick on the other side of the street. The brick on the other side is a red brick, and there's a beige brick on this side of the street, mostly on left and right. And it was probably not the right way to go. There is actually two different beiges prevalent on this side of the street, and it's a slightly darker and a slightly brighter brick. So we decided after your comments that it's a better way to actually take the red out and keep the two beige colors, the slightly different clay colors in our facade.
And that's all brick?
This is all brick. This remained brick as before. It's just a lighter colored brick. Right. And the facade paneling, which is a through colored fiber cement panel, this one here, this area, that is from a selection of the manufacturer. They have like 12.5 colors. We picked the one that's closest to the darker area of brick. So this is not brick. And down here, and I'll get back to that a little bit later, we went through a multitude of iterations of how to get a curved wall. And you, initially, when we presented this to you, you were under the impression it might be EFIS or some kind of a lower quality, or say textile quality finish, but we always had this planned in a real 3-coat cementitious stucco, the old world type stucco. We have integrated that in quite a few schools in the past quite successfully as a material that is allows us to create curved elements and longevity. We also took the same rendering that we did here of the front entrance now. This rendering also shows you now a view more related to the front entrance rather than what we did in it before. We just superimpose that from another points of view on the street. It does not work well with the cloudy sky that darkened this here. This is going to be the same color here next door, and this one is the same color as this. It was a little difficult to get that correct in the rendering, but we have material samples here. This is the view from what we had before, just again from the first presentation and the second presentation. There will be street trees planted right in front of the building as well that we didn't want to show because they hide the rest of the building.
On that previous rendering,
yes.
how far back does the bridge go on the right side?
So we step, I can show this, I have an elevation a little bit later. Since there is a slight courtyard, a little entrance recess between each building, neighboring building and ours, there is an opportunity to bring these finishes back and create more than a two-dimensional treatment of this. The site plan has not changed in any way. We again are using the entire lot for the first floor, where the cafeteria is underneath here, and then we have some setbacks to deal with in the rear yard. And this street here, Gerard Avenue, is sloping down. Down is here. I was overridden by my staff and our consultants. I wanted to show a little bit more about the history of what our thought process was, but in the end they preferred to show you only one slide, quickly summarizing just the constraints that we have from the schools program and our building, that it's not just a residential building where every floor can be the same. It's always a window of a room. We have so many different uses on this facade and different requirements for windows and opening, and I wanted to just briefly at least talk to this. We have classrooms here. There's always 2 classrooms on every floor, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floor. Top is gymnasium, which is a requirement of, they want uniform lighting. We also looked at the band of window on top, but it all looked very office-like and not to this area. So we kept punched openings, although one of the other comments were to quiet down the facade and align things. So we did align the gym windows and made them larger too, which again required us, because of the cost increase, to see where we can offset things. Also the stair windows here. So this is a stairwell, and this stairwell needs a window at landings, and the landings are intermediate landings, so they're not at the same level as the rest of the school. So we also looked at how can we bring this finish here down on the other side as well, and it just does not work because this window these windows do not align with the rest of the windows. And the size of the stair window, I don't need a 6-foot by 6-foot window in the stairwell. We just want to get some ventilation and light into the stairwell. Then we're struggling with having some offices here, on every floor is the same, and some restrooms as well. So one of the schemes I proposed was, why don't we make all the windows the same size and the larger ones? The school was very happy about that because they actually wanted to have windows that go all the way from left wall to right wall, which again get us back into the office look, and was a very commercial look to it and had nothing to do with the neighborhood. So we kept now, that would mean that we have in the bathroom 6-foot by 6-foot windows, which is tiny ADA bathrooms. We try to relocate the bathrooms. That didn't really work with the space program either. So there was a few comments that actually from you that alluded that you actually did like playfulness, potentially the playfulness of this facade. So we actually kept the undulation of large, small windows because it does allow us to first, I have another slide here, but I don't want to bore you with this. Since this is over a subway tunnel, this needs structure also for cost reason, and we have cross bracings that we don't want to have in the classrooms. There's a stair. There was really only one place to put them, and as you can see, even now with the larger windows that we included, we will have a few troubles with maybe a cross bracing being inside the window. It's not going to look that great from the inside, but from the exterior you wouldn't see it. The reflection of the glasswood height that also on the gym we'll have a little bit of an issue. We tried to work around this with the initial scheme. I don't know if you remember the windows that had more of a free pattern that looked too busy to a lot of you. So we try to align everything now and give them 2 rows, which give them even light, so the school is happy with that. They got larger windows, the contractor is not happy, but we were able to do something else. And then, so these are, it's just a lot of different things to punch into one, put into one facade.
So could I ask you,
yes.
those lines, the curvy, squiggly lines connecting the windows?
Yes.
Are those individual panels?
These are panels, and they are not curved, so these are all still straight lines, for cost reasons too, but we do just connect the corners of the windows, which gives it, if you look at the rendering, it actually will not be very prevalent. This is a 3/16 inch gap that is not very visible from, it gives it enough texture. We believe we also played, we had 2 staff review meetings here, and a lot of back and forth. There's also panels with different surface textures. It all was deemed to be too busy in the end, and we wanted to calm the facade down. So this is just an elevation, which is a little bit boring to look at because it really just treats everything in plane. What is a little bit more significant here is that we heard you, and I agree with you that the curve might be better suited towards the entrance, which we had. We had a little curve in here, but not much. I also, jumping back, sorry, I jumped around a little bit, but also of the requirements. I have a second means of egress coming out of here, and it can only be here. There's no other way I can put this. I have a refuse, which is also here in this niche, and I have a bike room that's required by DOB. Rather than creating 3 openings, I felt we make this niche as narrow as possible. I know it's the back entrance or exit of the school, but by flipping this curve around, it is as small as possible and combines 3 required doors into one niche, so they're all set back. Whereas we try to keep the entrance as prominent as possible. Just to remind you also, we were able to make a case to the DOB as to a required ramp that was here coming from a discrepancy in the old MTA documents that we had to lift the building for 3 feet because the tunnel is almost right underneath the parking lot surface right now. So we need to get up to this level. They allowed us to put a chairlift in there, which is small and it's recessed, and it's not a big ramp and recess that meanders up. I have to put my entrance on the very left, as much to the left as possible, because this street is pitching down, and every foot I move over, I have to add a step or another foot of ramp, and it needs to, there's also some remoteness requirements for exits. So I don't want to get too much into this, but the changes are, the curve changed direction, and it's a much bigger arch here right now, as you can see before and now. School wasn't too happy about losing some of their admin space. It's valuable first floor space, but we were able to convince them that this is necessary to emphasize the entrance, and I think in the end they agree with that. It certainly looks better. It just is a little bit more difficult for the space use inside. Here's the chairlift. We did find a good comment from you and staff was this column here, this enclosed, there's a structural column in here. We did find that we do have actually some leeway here of pushing back the enclosure of this column, so it is not part of an element here. Let me go back. There's a bigger shadow line here, and it's recessed into the building. So it's not coming all the way out to the front. And then here you can see the niche for my second means of egress, the refuse and the bike room, all in this little niche off to the side. I don't think there is much more on this slide. we were asked to put just dimensions on the drawing, so it's the same, it's just a window type. So these windows are all larger now up here, and the stair windows are larger there. We got 3'6" by 3'6", so it's a large stair window now, 42 inches square.
So what else do you want to show us?
So I wanted to show us here the side elevations that before and now we bring back any treatment that we did here with the softening of the edge and the facade that you all felt like should be attempted. With the banding that we introduced, the corbelling on top of the building, which is a brick that steps out. We bring this treatment, whatever we do in the front, around the corner for 5 feet before the EFA stucco, exterior insulated facade system stucco, starts with a column edge to the brick. And on the other side, what you said before, we did return this before. We now bring this back a little further, and we also bring back the banding on the sides, on the little courtyards on each side. And then in the back, nothing really changed much. We really need to, we had to move windows around here. There's a huge truss in here, and these windows just, they never work. And there's a shaft here, so there were 2 blind windows in here before, which we took out for cost reasons. The civilian section that we were just asked to include, it shows you a first floor level versus subway tunnel and building. Same section, but through the second means of egress stair here at the end of the building. And then here some of details of the real, and we have spec included for you and then submittal, real cementitious 3-coat stucco on the first floor. The color, I failed to mention that the color from white, we toned that down to be more in line with the rest of the facade. And then here's a typical detail of our fiber cement rain screen that integrates the building department required through insulation. And then one more detail here, we have the 3 different sections of the facade are either separated by a band of windows here or by a shadow line. And the shadow line is a simple metal profile that is dark colored and is just creating the separation between different materials on the same facade.
Okay.
Full veneer brick on the building and typical window detail and typical facade section.
Okay. Let's ask the commissioners a question. So we're ready for a presentation, I think. Understand it? Okay. My own thoughts and what others speak, of course. Very difficult site, lots of constraints. I think you've made good headway in the coloration of the building. I get it. And I think we gratuitous mark that a danger of commissions like this is that we could gravitate toward generic or similar solutions. This design on this site is not reminiscent of anything I've ever seen before. Not sure exactly what that might mean in my own terminology, but I think it responds to the program that you're given. It responds to the difficulties of the site, and it just might be a refreshingly different kind of approach. That one drawing that you had of the red X's, I think if I were Richard Rogers, which I'm not, if Richard Rogers had this commission, I think he would riff on that as a form giver, or at least the articulation of the facade. But you've chosen to kind of conceal that, but expose it as well in other ways through the wide variety of windows. You said you hope that those metal panel divisions, 3/16 of an inch, don't read. Well, I hope they do read, because I think that is a saving grace, actually, of all those discord windows. And I think the lines that those will show, and I think they will show, more than they show in the rendering, will not only make sense of those, that will, to some degree, will give a likeness and almost a frivolity that is not such a bad thing to have in a school. So anyway, those are my thoughts. I'm sure that others have other thoughts, and I think it's appropriate to approve. Other speakers? Yes.
I thought that, I think it's much improved. I think that the addition of the historical brick ties in really effectively with the buildings around it, with the general characteristics of the district. I think the regularization of windows does the same thing. I think the applicant can work with the staff to make sure that the brick colors and other panel colors are all kind of working together. I think the change with clarification of the entrance curve is a cementitious stucco as opposed to the EFIS is the right decision. I do worry a little bit about the areaway to the north, the right, which could become a place for people to hang out in, but you might consider a gate there, but I think in general the modification of the entry is all good. I think the return of the materials was an essential move that, again, strongly ties it to its context. So in general, I think it's much improved as appropriate.
John, I think the most striking thing, and I'm in this neighborhood all the time, I'm just here about 4 or 5 days ago, the most striking thing I think about that, the original, was the colors for me. And it really didn't, I don't think it pulled the buildings across the street together to it. And even in the rendering you're seeing, it doesn't really tell you how much the match is now. When you look at the samples, you really get it. And I think that's going to help the building to really blend in nicely and do what it needs to do. So I think it's appropriate.
We won't ask why in that neighborhood all the time, but I think we know.
There's a cathedral down the street.
And a fan shake, right? Anybody else wishing for their comments? Okay, well, I think that congratulations. It seems like you've traveled a distance, and it wasn't easy necessarily with this difficult site, but it's a great program. And thanks the principal for coming here to explain it to us.
John. In the matter of document number LPC 19-32409, 700 Gerard Avenue in the Grand Concourse Historic District. The application is to construct a new building at an empty lot. I know that the Grand Concourse Historic District is characterized by 5- and 6-story apartment buildings built largely in 2 waves. The first wave occurred between 1922 and 1931 and featured revivalist architectural styles, and the second wave of apartment buildings were constructed between 1935 and 45 and were largely designed in the Art Deco and modern styles, which are found in clusters and dispersed among the earlier revival-style buildings in the streetscape. The historic district also features 2 parks and several institutional buildings and a stadium, including 2 contemporary-style buildings with irregular massing and fenestration. I also note that this lot was never built on as planned by Art Deco-style apartment buildings. I recommend approval, noting that the construction of a new building on this vacant lot will eliminate a gap in the streetscape, that the existing buildings along the stretch of Gerard Avenue have a consistent volumetric and spatial presence, generally featuring simple massing and wide street frontages, punctuated by recessed courtyards and gaps between buildings. Therefore, the broad proportions of the new building, set between the recessed courtyards of the adjacent buildings, will have a harmonious presence within the streetscape. The height of the proposed 6-story building will be comparable to other buildings on the street and throughout this historic district. That the plane of the front facade will align with the facades of the adjacent buildings, thereby reinforcing the street wall. That the large-scale abstract design of the proposed school building featuring 2 distinct cladding fields and fenestration patterns will be in keeping with the varied and eclectic designs of the contemporary institutional buildings found in this historic district. That the wrapping of the 2 cladding fields at the returns of the side facades gives the building a three-dimensional quality that lends visual heft to the abstract design, while recalling the use of design facades and side returns and courtyards of many of the historic apartment buildings in this historic district. That the use of punched openings, simple design geometrics, and patterned brickwork, and the placement and prominence of the streamlined curved entrance element will relate to the character-defining features of the Art Deco-style apartment buildings found throughout this historic district. That the tall base and curved entrance to the school building, integrating the primary entry doors and a barrier-free access within a deep recess, with school identification signage and ribbon windows on the curved wall, will be consistent with the scale and expression of primary entrances typically found on institutional buildings of this type. that the variety of materials and finishes of the front facade featuring buff brick, golden beige fiber cement panels, and light beige stucco cladding will harmonize with the materials, colors, and level of articulation of primary facades at buildings within this historic district, which feature patterned brickwork and terracotta details. That the rear of the building, which will be minimally visible from East 153rd Street, will be simple in design and well scaled to the context in which it is seen, thereby maintaining a subordinate role when seen in the context of the interior of the block. And that the proposed bulkhead at the roof will be simple in design and clad with brickwork to match the side facade, thereby remaining a discrete presence within the roofscape.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations, you're approved unanimously.
Thank you, Commissioners.